I couldn't sleep at all, feeling restless on the couch until 6 a.m. Checking my smartphone, I found a message from my daughter Alice's husband, Kevin. Our grandchild was born safely. William, wake up. Alice did it. We need to get to the hospital. I shook my husband William awake and started getting ready in a hurry. Alice! Kevin! When we arrived at the hospital room, besides the two of them, there was another tiny life whose name we needed to know. Do you have a name picked out?
No, we hadn't decided yet since we didn't know the gender. But it's a girl.
Oh, I see. I hope you find a lovely name for her. Our granddaughter was sleeping in Alice's arms on the bed. Seeing her reminded me of Alice when she was a baby.
Mom, do you want to hold her?
Can I? Then I will. Her sleeping face, her weight, her scent, everything was exactly the same. The pure, adorable figure naturally softened my expression. Look, it's Grandma Jessica and Grandpa William, Alice said as she tried to pass the baby to William. But then, he started sweating and shaking violently. Hey, what's wrong?
Don't bring her close to me.
What was happening? I looked at Alice and Kevin, who were just as shocked as I was. It was clear I hadn't misheard him.
Dad, what are you talking about?
Is something wrong? No, it's not that. I feel an intense heat from her, like the terrifying heat from that fire.
William, is there anything I can do to help? William is blind. 3 years ago, there was a massive fire at the chemical plant where he worked, and he suffered severe burns to his eyes. Although his life was spared, he lost his sight.
Oh, it's you, Jessica. I'm fine now.
Despite his blindness, his kind and cheerful personality remained unchanged. The amount of struggle, the pain, and the effort he must have gone through is unimaginable. If you need anything, just let me know.
I've gotten used to it by now. You don't need to worry so much.
He always said that, but I could never fully stop worrying about him. Despite his misfortune, William had a unique skill. He could understand a person's true feelings through conversation. It wasn't any kind of supernatural power, just an acute sense that seemed almost magical to an outsider. It's well known that people who lose their sight often have heightened hearing, and there are scientific theories supporting this. In William's case, he was always perceptive to others' emotions, but after losing his sight, this sense became even sharper. Because of this, both Alice and I often sought his advice, a habit we couldn't break. That's how dependable William was. Most recently, when Alice introduced her boyfriend, that sixth sense proved its worth. It was about a year ago.
This is Kevin.
Nice to meet you for the first time. I'm Kevin McCarthy. Alice has always been so kind to me.
Kevin was a well-mannered and well-groomed young man, the kind of person you'd call a fine, upstanding citizen. Whether he was the type to not be easily intimidated or the type to not show his emotions, he was actively engaged in the conversation either way. Alice, on the other hand, seemed somewhat more nervous. That was understandable. Alice's father had a keen insight into reading between the lines, so if something caught his attention, he would point it out later. Kevin had apparently heard that William was visually impaired, but he probably didn't know about his special skill. However, even without relying on William, there were no obvious oddities or suspicious points. In fact, I could sense William's thoughtfulness in Kevin's words here and there, and I personally had a very good impression of him. The two were originally colleagues at work, and they became close as they interacted more and more, both at work and in their private lives. William was listening intently to their conversation. As it grew completely dark outside, William offered his thoughts on Kevin.
Regardless of his looks, he seems like a good person.
With those words, Alice and I let out sighs of relief. Of course, they stemmed from a sense of reassurance. On a whim, I tried to convey Kevin's appearance to William by giving an example of an actor he resembled.
Seriously? That personality with those looks? He's too perfect. He might get caught up in some bad business.
William said with a wry smile. From then on, Kevin often visited our home, brought by Alice. Even now, he was attentive to us, especially William, and again, there were no faults to be found. I felt a deep sense of relief and joy from the bottom of my heart, knowing that I could safely let Alice marry Kevin. Then a simple question occurred to me. Can I ask you something?
Yes, what is it?
Kevin is such a good person, so I'd like to know about his parents too. If it's okay, would you tell me about them? After a brief pause, Kevin smiled bitterly and apologetically avoided the topic.
I'm sorry. I lost my parents in an accident when I was young.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I apologize for asking about this. Still, Kevin's attitude didn't change.
No, it's okay. It couldn't be helped. But would you mind if I talked a little?
I was deeply impressed by his constant consideration for others. I had to respond to that respect. Yes, of course. Tell me anything.
Because I don't have my own parents anymore, I've been thinking. I couldn't properly show filial piety, so if I had the chance, I'd like to do it on their behalf. That way, I'm sure my parents would be happy, and I would feel a little more at ease.
This confession sounded to me like a cry from his heart. It was a flood of immeasurable emotions.
So, even in this situation, I feel like I'm projecting my own parents onto you. I want to make sure I have no regrets this time.
As soon as he finished speaking, I noticed William standing at the edge of my field of vision. William was quietly listening to Kevin's voice and nodding. That was the ultimate reassurance for me. After some time, the two were happily married. The ceremony went smoothly, and afterwards, Kevin moved into our home. Even after the marriage, Kevin continued to show concern for us, especially William. However, there was one thing that bothered me. Our house had a south-facing garden one step up from the road, and sometimes trash would be scattered there. 3 times last week, twice this week. I thought maybe crows or some other birds had dropped it, but that seemed too coincidental. However, even if someone was doing it on purpose, the damage wasn't severe enough to make a big fuss about, so for the time being, I decided to keep it to myself without telling anyone. Sometime after early summer had passed, we received a report from Alice and Kevin that they were expecting a baby. It was truly a joyous occasion. On the other hand, while we could manage with Kevin living with us, if there was going to be one more person, we would have to seriously consider moving. Given William's visual impairment, it might be a good idea to choose a barrier-free property. One night, as the two of us were pondering this, we heard the sound of leaves rustling in the hedge that served as a privacy screen in the front yard.
What was that sound?
It wasn't a gentle sound like the wind blowing, but a slightly rough sound, as if something had passed through. I had an uneasy feeling in my chest. I couldn't always rely on William at times like this. I made up my mind, grabbed the edge of the curtain, and flung it open with force.
Wow! What's wrong? What happened?
Lying on the shrubbery shrouded in darkness was the carcass of a crow. At that moment, I was convinced. The one throwing trash in our yard was not a crow, but a person with clear malicious intent. After contacting the city and the police and having them dispose of the carcass, I told the 3 of them about the situation and my speculations.
Why did you keep quiet about it?
The trash up until now seemed like it really could have been blown in by the wind. The dump isn't far away, so I thought it must have been the work of birds.
Now, let's think about what to do from here on. There's only so much we can do, though.
You're right. We could make the fence higher or something, but that wouldn't be a fundamental solution. Then, why don't we buy a security camera?
We discussed various opinions on the matter and decided to install a security camera. About a week after the camera was set up, the pregnant Alice discovered trash dumped in the yard once again. When we checked the camera to identify the culprit, their identity was revealed surprisingly easily. The security camera footage clearly showed a woman with long hair throwing a garbage bag she was holding in her right hand, capturing not only her build but also her face. Then, Alice muttered in a small voice,
This person. I feel like I've seen her somewhere before.
She thought about it for a while, but in the end, she couldn't seem to remember, so we decided to wait for Kevin to come home. That night, when we had Kevin check as soon as he got home, a startling revelation slipped out.
This person is Miranda. She's my coworker.
According to him, she had been persistently pursuing him, which had been troubling him. At first, he indirectly turned her down, but as her invitations gradually became more extreme, he clearly rejected her, revealing his relationship with Alice. Given that, it's not hard to imagine why she resorted to such an outrageous act this time.
So that's why she looked familiar.
But I wonder if the police will take action even if we report it. You know, I've heard stories about how they don't really respond to stalking cases.
I think it'll be fine since we have such solid evidence. For now, let's at least explain the situation.
Contrary to my expectations, the police took the matter seriously. Thanks to that, the woman named Miranda received a stern warning from the police and was forced by the company to write a written oath not to approach Alice and Kevin, and on top of that, was transferred to a regional branch. Her excuse was that she apparently aimed to harass them. The only thing that differed from my prediction was that her resentment was directed not at Kevin, but at Alice, who had stolen Kevin away. It was completely misdirected anger, to say the least. In any case, peace had returned to our home once again. The pregnancy period passed in the blink of an eye. And as Alice's belly finally grew large, it was time for her to be hospitalized for the delivery. As we were busy with this and that, from preparations for the hospital stay to things needed after the birth and so on, I suddenly remembered the past. When Alice was born, it was a difficult delivery. That was already more than 20 years ago, but everything vividly comes back to me as if it were yesterday. Before I knew it, I realized with deep emotion that I was now in the position of watching over it. It was nighttime when Alice started to feel labor pains. Therefore, William and I stayed home, and only Kevin would accompany her.
I'm excited.
I felt that William's words were a mix of pure joy and a hint of sadness. That's only natural, since he won't be able to see his first grandchild's face. As I was at a loss for how to respond to those words, William, perhaps sensing this, continued in a small voice.
Up until now, I've never deeply regretted losing my sight, but this time it's painful. I wanted to see my grandchild's face too.
I'll look at the baby for you. Didn't I vow to be your eyes?
Saying this won't change anything, and it puts you in a tough spot to respond.
As I thought, William sees right through even the little details.
Even with this strange power, I can't see my grandchild's face. Jessica, would you mind joining me for a drink?
Yes, of course. That's fine. There's only so much I can do. If drinking together can ease his pain even a little, I'll gladly keep him company. Unable to settle down and sleep, I found myself on the sofa at 6 a.m. When I checked my smartphone, there was a message from Kevin. It seemed our grandchild was safely born. William, wake up! Alice did her best. Let's go to the hospital. I shook the sleeping William beside me awake and hurriedly got ready. Perhaps because it was a weekday morning, the hospital felt emptier than usual. There were few people walking the hallways, and in the shop area, there were some people in pajamas who appeared to be inpatients. Amidst that, there was one shadow that gave off an indescribable feeling of suspicion. There wasn't anything particularly suspicious about this person, but they exuded a sense of not fitting in with their surroundings. William seemed to sense something too.
The atmosphere feels off. Is someone there?
When I told him about the figure, William muttered,
Don't carelessly approach.
And tapped the floor with his cane. I ignored that person and took William's hand as he started walking. Alice! Kevin! When we entered the hospital room, there was one more small life that we had to call by name, in addition to the two of them.
Good morning, you too. How are you feeling?
Morning. I'm fine. They said the baby is healthy too.
I see. That's great to hear.
As he said that, William grimaced, so I had him sit down for now. When I asked if he felt unwell, he said not really, so we decided to share in the joy for the moment. Have you decided on a name?
No. We didn't ask about the gender either, so we were planning to decide after the baby was born. By the way, it's a girl.
I see. I hope you give her a lovely name. Our granddaughter was sleeping in Alice's arms on the bed. Looking at that sight, what I remembered was, of course, the image of Alice in the past.
Mom, want to try holding her?
If it's okay with you, I will. That sleeping face, weight, and smell were all exactly the same. Her adorable, innocent appearance naturally softened my expression. Look, it's Grandma Jessica and Grandpa William. The very moment I tried to hand that little life to William. He was drenched in sweat, his whole face, and his body was shaking violently. Hey, what's wrong?
That child! Don't bring her near me!
What in the world was happening? Thinking I must have misheard, I looked at their faces and saw that they were also surprised and shocked. It was clear, without even saying, that I hadn't misheard.
Wait a minute, Dad. What are you saying?
Are you feeling ill or something? No, that's not it. I feel a burning heat. I don't want to remember, but that terrifying heat like the fire back then.
Could it be that he sensed something from this baby? I handed our granddaughter to Alice and went to William's side. Gradually his trembling subsided, but he was still short of breath, breathing from his shoulders. Are you okay?
Yeah. I've calmed down a bit. Jessica, can we talk for a moment?
Sure. I left our daughter's hospital room as William told me to. I found a rest area a short walk away, so I informed him of it.
I'm sorry for startling you. That child is fine.
Can you tell me what happened? After a short pause, William slowly began to speak.
I probably picked up on someone's emotions nearby. It was so intense, unlike anything I've ever felt before. I was assaulted by burning resentment and anger. It was strangely real, so I lost my composure a bit. I'm sorry, bad timing.
No, don't apologize. It's not something you can control. But still, the resentment and anger. Unfortunately, I had an idea about that. That woman named Miranda. Could it be that she, who had received a stern warning from the police and was forced to write a pledge and transfer by the company, was approaching again? I knew the possibility was extremely low, but I just couldn't get it out of my head. Could it be that? Before I could finish, William interrupted me as if cutting me off.
Yeah, it's not impossible. And you said you saw a suspicious figure in the lobby earlier. They might still be nearby. Could you go look for that person?
Got it. I borrowed Kevin's help for the search. I couldn't very well walk around with William and Alice, but if I went alone, I might pass by without noticing. So I asked him to accompany me, as he could move around fairly freely and knew Miranda's face well. However, even after checking most of the areas accessible to the general public, we couldn't find her and had no choice but to return to the hospital room empty-handed. Of course, it would be fine if it turned out to be an unfounded worry.
In any case, the hospital is safer. There are more eyes around, and I can stay by your side the whole time. Jessica and William, you guys should go home and rest.
You're right. Then please take care of Alice.
Understood. And call me if anything happens.
And so William and I set off for home early, suppressing our restless feelings. William didn't show it in his demeanor, but he had wanted to look at our granddaughter's face more leisurely. Who would that child resemble more, Alice or Kevin? What kind of name would she be given? It seemed like another night of not being able to sleep well due to these thoughts. Around evening, a few hours after returning home, William began to utter ominous words once again.
It's back. I feel it again. A burning heat. What in the world is this?
According to him, it wasn't the kind that required a hospital visit. In that case, that strange ability of his was probably picking up on stronger emotions and going out of control. The problem was those strong emotions. At the moment, there was only one thing that came to mind, and it was extremely dangerous at that. I decided to seriously and carefully consider what I should do. Emotionally, I wanted the police to come right away, but I lacked definite proof. If I tried to confirm it myself, depending on the other party, forget about being able to stand up to them, there was no guarantee for my life. At that point, I suddenly remembered the existence of the security camera. That's right. If I check that, it might serve as some kind of evidence. I checked it with determination, but for better or worse, nothing was captured there. Just as I was about to reach a dead end, a ray of light shone through, like a saving grace from the heavens. A message that shook my smartphone. It was from Kevin.
Is everything okay over there?
I had unconsciously excluded him as an option, not wanting to disturb their first time alone as parent and child, but now that it had come to this, I had no choice but to borrow his help. I told Kevin everything as it was, and he replied briefly.
Got it. I'll head over now.
I was plagued by a sense of powerlessness. How pathetic it was that I couldn't do anything at a time like this and could only wait. Even though I knew full well that it wasn't my fault, I couldn't help but feel that way. Kevin returned in about 30 minutes. According to William, the heat he felt was gradually intensifying. If we were to believe that as is, it would mean danger was approaching. Immediately, Kevin and I set out to search around the house, and I grabbed a broom for self-defense. The sun had completely set, and while it wasn't pitch black, it was quite dark. That further fueled my fear. Neither Kevin nor I missed that sound. The noise coming from behind the house was clearly accompanied by a human presence.
Jessica, I'll go check the back, so please contact the police just in case.
I went back inside the house as Kevin said and called the police.
One suspect apprehended. I repeat, suspect apprehended.
How could this be? Someone was really lurking there. The profile I caught a glimpse of was undoubtedly that woman named Miranda. She was taken to a police car by multiple officers without making a scene. According to the police, she had a fire starter and a lighter on her. The worst possible outcome that implied goes without saying. The moment I realized we were safe, my legs gave out.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. My legs just lost strength when I felt relieved. Kevin's brave actions were wonderful, but what would have happened without William's mysterious power? William's trembling had completely subsided, and he was back to his usual cheerful self.
It gives me a lot to think about, but I'm glad everyone's safe. Am I more amazing than I thought? More amazing doesn't even begin to cover it. It's in the realm of superpowers at this point. I guess so. If I were a bit younger, I might have been able to help people more.
I later heard that Miranda had indeed snuck into the hospital where Alice was admitted that day, waiting for a chance to cause harm. Even worse, it seems her target this time was not Kevin or Alice, but our newborn granddaughter. Behind this was apparently a self-centered grudge that she had been demoted and transferred for stalking behavior at her new workplace, and then lost her place and was forced to quit. However, on that day, she abandoned her plan due to the large number of people around, but unable to let it go, she decided to set our house on fire. The true nature of the heat William felt was undoubtedly this evil intent. After being taken in by the police, she is in detention awaiting her due punishment. Just when I thought peace had finally arrived. Suddenly, people claiming to be Miranda's parents showed up.
We are terribly sorry for the great trouble our daughter has caused you.
When she is released, we will take her back to our hometown and keep a close eye on her.
It seems they didn't come to beg for forgiveness, but William happens to be out. He left this morning with Kevin driving to pick up Alice from the hospital. I can sense their sincerity, but I can't verify the true intent behind their words. Naturally, I didn't let them inside and dealt with them appropriately at the doorstep before sending them away. Afterwards, a chilling question came to mind.
How did they know where our house was?
Realizing this, I decided to propose expediting the moving plans I had been considering for a while. Alice was safely discharged from the hospital, and with our family growing by one, I told them everything that had happened, hiding nothing.
So that's what happened. In that case, we should move sooner rather than later.
William eagerly went out with Kevin and me to look at properties, reading the atmosphere of each place. Fortunately, we found a good plot of land and house that satisfied both William and us, so we decided the 5 of us would live there. I realized for the first time that I hadn't been able to fully believe in William's special ability until now. In this incident, William saved the lives of our entire family. I'm starting to think this is no mere talent, but a genuine superpower. Our new home is a comfortable barrier-free property. It's kind not only to William but also to Sarah, the newest addition to our family. With this, Alice and I, and even Kevin, can live with some peace of mind. The presence that threatened us is gone. I'm genuinely looking forward to starting a new life in this new place. Even so. Hey, Kevin. Got a minute?
Yes? What is it? Is there something I can help with?
No, that's not it. I wanted to ask. Are you glad you ended up living with us? You're newlyweds with a newborn daughter, so you should be in the midst of happiness.
What are you saying? I told you before, I wanted to show my filial piety. I've always longed for a family, so this is perfect. No, this is precisely why I'm happy.
As I fell silent, he continued.
Besides, I'm truly grateful to both of you.
Grateful?
Yes. If it wasn't for William, who knows what would have happened to us by now? And Jessica, it's because you believed in him that we avoided the worst. If either of you were missing, the outcome would have been uncertain. So filial piety and repaying a debt of gratitude. Just having that chance makes me.
Thank you. At least this time, I can tell without borrowing William's power. There's no way Kevin is lying. Next month, you'll get to meet your 10th grandchild. Suddenly, I noticed her belly was swollen, and Mary was happily rubbing it. The room was small, and with 4 children and 9 grandchildren around, I hadn't noticed. She was already in her final month. Wow! Surprise, joy, and then an overwhelming anxiety all hit me at once. Well, I hadn't seen you in about a year, so I never got the chance to tell you. It's a boy. Live long, Grandma. Yes, indeed. Everyone present rejoiced and celebrated this happy news. Amid the exchanged words of happiness, I couldn't fully suppress the complex feelings inside me. The truth was, my eldest son Tom had been continuously taking money from me, depleting my savings. Life had been a struggle day by day. I wish I could give Mary a present, but I no longer had the means. Never did I expect to feel so miserable at such a joyous gathering. I felt utterly pathetic and was on the verge of tears. I quietly left the room and went upstairs. Tom's door, slightly ajar, caught my eye. What state was his room in now? As I slowly opened the door, the devastated room was revealed. Stunned, tears I had been holding back rolled down my cheeks. Then, I heard someone coming up loudly from downstairs. At that moment, various thoughts raced through my mind, and one possible outcome crossed my mind. That just couldn't happen. In a split second, I jumped off the balcony. My name is Kate. A widow in my 60s, I lost my husband a few years ago. For about 3 years after his death, I was in a slump. But realizing I couldn't go on like that and encouraged by a close neighbor, I decided to take a part-time job. Now, I work part-time at a supermarket, which gives me something to look forward to every day. I enjoy the small talks with customers lining up at the cash register. Fish is cheap today, isn't it? I would initiate conversations. This made even the busiest of housewives feel relaxed, and I was happy about it. A man in work clothes came to buy a big hamburger for lunch. He seemed to be in his mid to late 30s. His suntanned face looked robust, reminding me of my son Tom. I have 2 sons and 2 daughters, 4 children in total. Raising them was a struggle, but I managed to get all 4 through to college. My second son, eldest daughter, and youngest daughter each found wonderful partners and got married. Now, they're blessed with children and are very busy every day. Only my eldest, Tom, has no desire to marry and lives with me. He is very caring, perhaps because he is the eldest. He takes the initiative to help with things I don't understand, like internet and smartphone settings. Also, he liked to spend his money on hobbies. His salary and bonuses often went to his fishing hobby. I bought a new reel again. He was happily unpacking a parcel that had arrived today, admiring his new gear. It's fine to spend on your hobby, but are you saving properly? I am. I've also started some investment savings. He had been managing his finances well, unknown to me, and contributing to the household. I was relieved to know he was managing his money properly. Are you going sea fishing again this weekend? Yeah, I'll be going. Just like the man in work clothes, Tom's face and arms were sunburned. I could tell he enjoyed spending the day out with his friends, fishing under the sun. It was healthy, and that was what mattered most. Be careful not to fall into the sea. I know. Tom inspected his new fishing gear one by one, his eyes sparkling. He looked like a little child beholding a treasure. Beside him, I happened to glance at my planner. The first Sunday of last month was my birthday. On this day, my married children and grandchildren came over, and we all celebrated my birthday together. They insisted on celebrating every year without fail, so it has become a tradition. Especially my youngest daughter, Mary, was enthusiastic about it. It's only once a year, Mom, she would say, and also invite her sister and brother. With a total of 9 grandchildren, the house felt a bit cramped with everyone in it. But that was the only day we could all gather. I try to think it's nice once in a while. Despite everything, having a large family is something I'm happy and grateful for. Thanks to them, I always look forward to the next birthday right after one ends. To still look forward to birthdays at my age. I murmured to myself and couldn't help but laugh, even though I was alone. Looking back, I think that moment was the peak of my happiness. Amidst days of cherishing happiness, it came unexpectedly. On a day when spring was supposed to be near, yet cold rain fell. When I returned home from my part-time job, Tom was sitting in the living room. In the dark, head in hands. He was muttering something. "Tom? What's wrong?" I did nothing wrong. It's him." Sensing something serious, I quickly turned on the light and made him some hot cocoa. In the bright room, I saw that Tom's hair and clothes were wet from the rain. His usually vibrant, sun-kissed face looked pale and drained. Then, I took my time to listen to him. Shockingly, he had been laid off. "My boss tricked me. And then, it was actually his mistake, but I got blamed." "But can't you apologize and ask for another chance?" "It's no use. It was a pretty big deal, and they said it's irreversible." "That's terrible." "I'm done. I can't trust anyone anymore." I couldn't stop him from crying. Nor could I tell him not to. It was the first time I saw Tom so defeated. How could I make him understand that I knew how he felt, betrayed by a boss he trusted? For now, I suggested he take a warm bath. Then, Tom ate a little dinner and went to bed early. It was a night when Tom, who had been so positive about work and hobbies, changed completely. From the next day, he mostly stayed in his room. It seemed he spent his days in a daze, possibly shocked, not even trying to look for a new job. He stopped going fishing. Fishing gear boxes were carelessly thrown in a corner of the living room. Could it be that he would remain shut-in forever? I never imagined the lively Tom becoming a shut-in. Could it really come to this? However, my fears became reality, and Tom gradually stopped coming out of his room. When I called out to him through his door, I could hear him shouting back, "I can't trust anyone anymore. I don't want to work." "But maybe it'd be good to go outside, even just a little." "Leave me alone." After that, Tom didn't respond to me anymore. I kept going to my part-time job while Tom was shut in. Being at work was a relief. Talking with colleagues and having casual conversations with customers was soothing. But the moment I clocked out and headed home was the most depressing. Walking home slowly, shoulders drooped. I was desperate for Tom to recover. Seeing the man in work clothes coming to buy a hamburger every lunchtime made me feel inexplicably sad. What should I do? I never imagined my son, an adult, would become a shut-in. I was at a loss, not knowing who to consult. I thought about asking his siblings, but I didn't want to burden them with unnecessary worry. They have their own families. It wouldn't be fair to involve them in Tom's issues. "Tom? You're there, right?" Trying to do something, I stood in front of Tom's room upstairs. "Come down and eat something, at least." No matter how much I called, there was no answer. "Today it's pizza." Then, a dull sound. Tom had hit the wall. I was startled and stared at the door. Was he saying to leave him alone? I wasn't sure, but something must have upset him. "Tom, I'll leave the pizza on the kitchen table. Heat it up and eat it later." I made sure my voice didn't tremble as I said this and went downstairs. I just wished for Tom to return to his old self. A few days later, on my day off, Tom came out of his room. His hair was messy, sticking out everywhere. And his beard had grown, making his face look unkempt. Still in his pajamas, he opened the fridge, grabbed 3 cans of beer, and went back to his room. I worried if he was drinking like that every day. I knocked on Tom's door at lunch and dinner time. "You need to eat something nutritious." "Shut up! You don't understand how I feel." "Don't just drink. Why not go fishing like you used to?" "Do you really hate me that much?" "It's not that. I just want you to be your energetic self again." I was about to say that when Tom came out of his room. "I'll go out then. Happy now?" With that, Tom stormed out of the house. Where was he going in his pajamas? Without even telling me his destination? What am I supposed to do now? All I could do was murmur to myself in the living room. If my husband were still alive, what would he have said in such a situation? Looking at his photo for help yielded no response. It must have been showing on my face at work because one day, the manager asked me, "Your expression has been dark lately. Are you okay?" I didn't want to be a burden, so I forced a smile and replied, "I'm fine, just a bit of family stuff." Yes, just a little. Just a bit, I told myself as I worked through the day. Mary, even after getting married and having children, had always been concerned about me. On holidays, she would sometimes bring my granddaughter and for a visit. But lately, since Tom started shutting himself away, we had decided to meet outside. I didn't want them to see the mess his room had become. Mary didn't seem to mind for the first 2 or 3 times, but by the 4th, she seemed to sense something was off. It was during a break at a restaurant that she asked me, "Mom, is something wrong? We've been meeting outside a lot lately." "Is that so?" And seems to be having fun. And was happily playing with a killer whale plush toy I had bought for her. "Is Tom okay? He's not bothering you by going fishing all the time, is he?" "Not at all. Tom goes fishing almost every week. It's a sign he's doing well." The truth was he wasn't going fishing at all, but spending his time lazing around or going to the casino. I couldn't tell her that, so I desperately covered it up. Despite his previous good money management, lately, he's been squandering money on casinos and lotteries. "As long as he's okay," Mary said as she sipped her coffee. The sun was warm enough to make one slightly sweat, signaling the end of winter. I watched Mary and Anne, wishing this moment could last forever. But my wish was in vain as reality only got worse. "Give me some money, Mom." When I got home, Tom was demanding money in an irritated tone. "What for? What happened?" "It's the casino. They've got this new slot machine, and I lost everything. I need to go back and win." "Stop it. No more casinos, no lotteries. Give me the money now. I need it to get back at them." He snatched my bag, took some money from my wallet, and dashed out. It all happened so fast, I was left speechless. Terrifying. That feeling came later. My bag and the emptied wallet were thrown carelessly on the hallway floor. I just sat down, powerless. Why has it come to this? Will I never see the lively and vibrant Tom again? Am I doomed to spend my days with a declining Tom? With that despair, the days and then weeks passed. The frequency of Tom's outings and the amount of money he demanded increased. Sometimes I would find my wallet lighter than it should be. I couldn't leave my wallet at home without worry anymore. Thinking it a good opportunity, I started using electronic payments I learned at my cashier job, carrying no cash. I was happy about accumulating points, but when Tom found out I wasn't carrying cash, he exploded again. "Why not? It's just some pocket money. Why don't you get a job? Don't mess with me. Give me the money." He kept demanding money, spending it all on gambling. When the money was gone, he would shout and scream for more. I feared it might escalate to violence. I was so worn down, I lost the energy to meet with my children. Gradually, I saw less and less of Mary and Anne, using my part-time job as an excuse. After about a year of this exhausting routine, Mary contacted me. "It's almost your birthday, right? Let's all get together next Sunday." According to Mary, the grandchildren were planning another surprise for this year. Looking at the calendar, the annual birthday celebration was just around the corner. I hadn't even realized it. Given Tom's current state and my own condition, I couldn't feel like celebrating. I wanted to decline. But contrary to my true feelings, the idea lifted my spirits. The thought of my children and grandchildren wanting to celebrate with me made me happy. For just that one day a year, I too wanted to be lively and happy. That's what I found myself thinking. Thank you. I'll keep that day open then. I haven't spoken a word about Tom to them. As long as I keep quiet, and as long as Tom doesn't meet anyone, they won't find out. No need to worry them. That's what I decided, to pretend everything was fine with Tom just for the day of the celebration. Tom and I are living happily as ever. That's what I'll say. I murmured to myself when Tom wasn't around, convincing myself. After Mary's call, I started cleaning up the house bit by bit. It would be troublesome if there was no space to step in this room when more than 10 people gathered. I gathered all the dust-covered delivery boxes and threw them out with the trash. The bundles of lottery tickets thrown in the trash can were also bagged and discarded. I vacuumed while Tom was out because he would yell that it was noisy. I cleaned carefully, considering the birthday party was coming up. And then, the day arrived. It was a clear, calm day. About an hour before the children and grandchildren were to arrive, Tom left. When he found out about the birthday party the day before, "It's too noisy, cancel it," he had shouted. "I can't cancel it, everyone's already made plans." "Are you kidding me?" He then raged in his room for a while. Just a short while ago, after snatching some money from me, he went off to the casino. I felt a bit relieved. This way, Tom wouldn't have to meet any of the other family members. All that was left was to wait for everyone to arrive. Not long after Tom had left, the children and grandchildren started to arrive one by one. Being wished a happy birthday by everyone filled my heart. 9 grandchildren, each of them, celebrated with me. I was happy, yet I felt a complex mix of emotions. Was I right to feign happiness for these children? That thought unexpectedly crossed my mind. It's okay, it's just for today. I told myself, fighting off that small sense of guilt. The birthday party started soon after. Appetizers, salads, chicken, and pizza brought by everyone lined the tables. The last to arrive was a birthday cake made by the grandchildren, which Mary brought. The cake was topped with plenty of chocolate, strawberries, and blueberries. In the center, a chocolate plate read "Happy Birthday, Grandma." Its crooked letters endearingly hard to read. The warmth of their effort touched my heart. How wonderful! Thank you, everyone! I hugged each of the grandchildren, one by one. Their efforts in preparing this meant the world to me. Lastly, I hugged Anne. Thank you, Anne. I put the strawberries on. Her childish words overwhelmed me, and I hugged her again. Mom, you know, Mary said, standing next to Anne. Suddenly, I noticed her belly was swollen, and Mary was happily rubbing it. Next month, you'll get to meet your 10th grandchild. The room was so crowded I hadn't noticed. She was already in her final month. Wow! Surprise, joy, and an anxiety no less significant than these emotions all surged at once. Well, I haven't seen you for about a year, so I never got the chance to tell you. It's a boy. Live long, Grandma. Yes, indeed. And hugged me around the neck, leaning in. Everyone present rejoiced and celebrated this happy news. Congratulations. Our family is growing, I'll send a gift, they exchanged various words. Yet, somewhere inside me, I couldn't suppress the complex feelings. In truth, Tom had been continuously taking money from me, depleting my savings. My daily life had become a struggle. I wanted to give Mary a present if I could, but I no longer had the means. I never expected to feel so miserable at such a joyful gathering. Amidst the celebratory mood, I quietly slipped away. I felt so pitiful that I was on the verge of tears. Pretending to go to the bathroom, I went upstairs. Tom's room, with the door half open, caught my eye. What state was his room in now? I slowly opened the door. The room, with the curtains drawn, was dim. Empty beer cans and bottles, lottery tickets scattered everywhere. And fishing magazines left as they were. My business bag was torn and stuffed into the trash can. The fishing rods and other tools, relegated to a corner of the room, were covered in dust. In that devastated room, I stood dumbfounded. Why had it come to this? Tears I had been holding back streamed down my cheeks. Then, I heard a loud noise from downstairs and someone coming up. Turning around in shock, I saw Tom. His eyes, peering through disheveled bangs, gleamed unnervingly. As he spoke in a growling tone. "I lost at the casino. Give me some money. I'm going back." "Enough is enough. Just give me the money. I don't have it right now. The grandchildren are here, so please be quiet." "You have money for the grandchildren, but not for me?" "I don't have enough to give to the grandchildren either, really." "Lies. You're just treating me like a nuisance." Tom, furious, advanced on me. "Stop it. I want to give a gift to my new grandchild too, and it's frustrating that I can't. Isn't your own son more important to you?" I slipped past Tom and fled. Finding another room that was open, I entered one usually used for drying laundry, which had a balcony. Looking back, Tom was chasing after me, his eyes bloodshot, swinging his arms wildly. "Money! Give me money!" I went out onto the balcony. If Tom hit me and I fell badly, who knows what could happen. Such an incident might lead to Tom being arrested. This could severely hinder his chances of reintegrating into society. The remaining children and grandchildren would be hurt and saddened. That was absolutely not acceptable. In a moment of desperation, I jumped from the balcony. A fall from the second floor might result in broken bones at worst. Escaping Tom like this seemed a small price to pay. I landed headfirst. The world turning red, blue, then dark. A tremendous shock went through my body, and for a moment, my senses vanished. Alerted by the noise, the children screamed. The grandchildren started crying. And the area became chaotic. From the balcony, I saw Tom peering down. Looking shaken and frightened. He held his head and screamed. A cry heard by his siblings. I don't remember much after that. Tom's cries of regret or sorrow echoed in the distance. When I woke up, I was staring at the ceiling of a hospital room. The doctor told me I had sustained serious injuries requiring 6 months to heal. He scolded me. "Why on earth did you jump from the balcony?" I had fractured my right leg and right wrist, necessitating rehabilitation. Understandably, the children and grandchildren were shocked. They visited me in the hospital when they could, relieved I was alive. Though it was far from a simple matter of being safe, at least my life was spared. Everyone seemed relieved about that. Especially Mary thought her heart would stop. When she visited the hospital, she burst into tears upon seeing me. "Don't ever do something like that again." "Mom." "I'm sorry." It seems Tom confessed everything to his siblings that day. This revelation made them aware of our financial and living situation. "If you were in trouble, you should have told us. I didn't want to worry you." "Worrying would have been far better than this," Mary said, tears streaming down her face, even in front of Anne. Knowing about mine and Tom's situation, the children offered financial and living support. They sympathized with Tom's layoff but strongly criticized his subsequent actions. Tom also seemed to have deeply reflected on his actions. He worked hard to find re-employment and luckily secured a position at a small real estate company. After securing the job, Tom started visiting me in the hospital. He entered the room, shrinking in apology. "Mom, I'm sorry for all the trouble." His hair was neatly combed, his beard cleanly shaved. Dressed in a clean suit and tie, he looked like he was about to make a fresh start. I was surprised to see a slightly brighter atmosphere around him. "People can change, can't they?" "Don't get all sentimental on me." "But how did you change so suddenly?" Tom hesitated a little, then, looking down shyly, said, "That day, when you tried to escape from me by jumping from the balcony." "Yes." At that moment, I thought I had no other choice. "Watching you disappear as she fell from the balcony, Everything I had done flashed before my eyes in an instant. Tears welled up in Tom's eyes. And then I came to my senses, wondering what I had done. My jumping must have been a huge shock to Tom. Though it was a drastic measure, it could also be considered a risky choice. I'm sorry. I won't do anything like that again. That's my line. I'll take proper care of you, Mom, so don't leave me behind. True to his words, Tom changed his attitude and returned to the energetic person he was before being laid off. My injuries healed well, and after being discharged from the hospital, I continued to live with Tom. I no longer intend to be angry with Tom. Both Tom and I are in a better situation now. Later, surrounded by our children and grandchildren, we also celebrated my discharge from the hospital. This time, we'll celebrate grandly, Mary said, seemingly having rallied the siblings. By the time I was discharged, Mary's baby had been born, increasing the grandchildren to 10. A little boy with adorable hands. All I wish for is that he lives a healthy, happy, and prosperous life. What are you? A stalker or something? You disgust me. Go home already. I came to the wedding to celebrate the happily smiling bride and groom. Then, to my surprise, the groom turned out to be my ex-husband, Alec. I'm definitely not his stalker. Do you like me that much? If so, you should have come out in the open, and I might have considered you as an affair partner. Trying to crash my wedding is just too disappointing. All my past anger and the shock of suddenly encountering Alec just vanished. As Alec wished, I decided to leave. However, 30 minutes later, I ended up returning to the venue with someone. I wonder if Alec would be pleased with the surprise guest. It's going to be more interesting than any entertainment. I'm Melissa, 36 years old. I met my husband Stuart 10 years ago. At the nursing home where my grandmother was staying, I blurted out big when I first met Stuart, a caregiver there. He's close to 6.5 feet tall, big both vertically and horizontally. As I covered my mouth with my hand, feeling I had said too much, he smiled shyly. Big, right? Everyone calls me a bear. Gradually, I got closer to Stuart. Despite his appearance resembling a wild man-eating bear, his personality was like a cute bear sunbathing at a bear park. Kind, gentle, and comforting to be around. I never dreamed of marriage and had decided to stay single, but my stubborn heart was softened, and I ended up marrying. Now, blessed with our 4-year-old son Leon, I deeply feel it was the right thing to do. The reason I avoided marriage was because I had failed at it once. I got married for the first time at 22. To a man who was the opposite of Stuart, modern, slender, fresh-faced, and handsome. His well-featured face could make anyone believe he was a celebrity. In fact, my ex-husband Alec would often lie to people he just met. I used to model in Boston. Our married life was in my hometown, where it was quite rural. Not a farmland rural, but a place where everyone needs a car. Yet supermarkets and hospitals are only a 10-minute drive away, and if you drive 30 minutes more, you'll find a large shopping mall as well. I think it's a nice countryside. And as for Alec, he came from the city. He attended a nearby university and stayed in the area after graduation. At first, our marriage life was enjoyable. Alec got along with my friends, often suggesting we call someone to hang out. Being young, we would gather with friends, drink, and have fun. Alec was quick to fit in with a female-dominated environment. I thought he wanted to cherish everything about me, including my friendships. He loved me that much. I truly believed so. This is hard to say, but it was a few months into our marriage. A friend approached me seriously. Alec has asked me out multiple times to hang out just the two of us without telling you. It wasn't an invitation to play tag or pretend. My head was immediately filled with indecent thoughts. And it wasn't just her. Alec had approached almost all of my friends. I felt betrayed by Alec and sorry for my friends. I confronted Alec immediately. I'm just saying that to be sociable. It makes women happy. Alec carelessly patted my head as I turned red with anger. Well, some simple women might misunderstand kindness from a handsome guy like me. Luckily, none of my friends betrayed me to go along with Alec's invitations. Everything was attempted but not fulfilled, and my friends forgave him with awkward smiles. After that, Alec's interactions with my friends ceased. Alec was also close with my parents. Once a month, he would visit my parents' home and drink with my father. With no more plans with my friends, visits to my parents increased. Got some booze for today. Alec and my father, both fond of alcohol, got along well, and home visits would turn into daytime drinking sessions. Alec would bring selected drinks as gifts, pleasing my father. My mother, Reagan, would prepare appetizers, and we spent lively times as a family. Alec, comfortable and natural with my in-laws, was well liked by them. But gradually, my parents started to act differently. One time, as I was about to go to the bathroom, my mom stopped me and whispered secretly, "We'd appreciate it if you could reduce the frequency of your visits. You know, we're getting older, and it's becoming difficult for us." She was vague, but it seemed she had more to say. "The alcohol Alec brought today is hard to come by, you know. I heard it costs $500. What? It's not that expensive?" My mother clammed up. Then, she revealed something I hadn't expected. "He's been asking us to pay for it." What? "It's nice having Alec over and the alcohol is good. But, honestly, it's a burden to pay for expensive alcohol every time." Initially, the cost for the alcohol was around $20. "Could I get the money for the alcohol?" He would say so nonchalantly, and my mother happily paid. But gradually, the price increased, and it became normal for it to exceed $300. However, the actual cost of the alcohol was at most $50, and above all, it was purchased with our living expenses. $500 is just too much. But we can't spoil Alec's feelings, right? Indeed, my parents had repeatedly said that gifts were unnecessary, without me realizing the underlying sentiment. I thought I was doing filial piety by visiting frequently with Alec. I immediately confronted Alec, who looked happily flushed, about asking for money. Maybe because he was drunk, he responded nonchalantly, "What's the big deal? If you go to a club, you pay a lot of money, right? I'm bringing alcohol and drinking it with them, so I should get paid, or it's a loss." He didn't care about my anger at all, almost as if he expected gratitude. Turning towards my beet-red face, he laughed. "Hey, Melissa turned into an octopus. Reagan, make some octopus appetizers." I was so dumbfounded by the absurdity of it all that I lost my words. I just exchanged looks with my parents, who had twisted expressions. Alec seemed to like my family home. Unlimited drinks, a mother who worked like a maid, and he even receives pocket money. But I couldn't bring Alec home anymore. Ah, so boring. I'm nice to you and this is how you treat me. After that, Alec stopped coming to the house and started going out alone. On top of not giving me any money for living expenses, he had secretly incurred debts. And when infidelity came to light and I confronted him, he suddenly hit me. "Shut up. I don't need you anymore. It's over, we're getting divorced." And that's how we ended up divorcing. A bitter memory I don't want to even remember. I had forgotten about him, blessed with a new family, but 13 years after the divorce, for some reason, Alec was here. And next to a bride in a pure white dress. Alec was the groom. It was a wedding I was invited to by my junior at work, Chanel. The guest list exceeded 300 people, a grand ceremony. Alec in his late 30s had changed his vibe, but there was no way I would mistake him for someone else. The radiant beauty of his youth was gone, replaced by the air of a sweet, calm gentleman. He was spreading his best smile all over the reception. I had dressed up nicely but tried to make myself less noticeable by slouching a bit. My mind was full of why and how. Maybe my suspicious behavior made me stand out more, as I locked eyes with him. I smiled awkwardly and nodded slightly while sweating. Oh my God, how awkward. I felt so uncomfortable that I went to the bathroom. The reception had just started. I spent some time there, but I couldn't stay hidden for another 2 hours. Reluctantly, as I was about to return, Alec, with his arms crossed, was blocking the way in front of the venue. What are you doing here? I wanted to ask the same. When we divorced, Alec had scornfully said he hated country folk and moved to the city. I didn't know he had come back to my hometown. Alec leaned in with the same unpleasant smile as before. What's the matter? You still hung up on me after all these years? He seemed gentlemanly earlier, but it must have been just the outfit and the setting. Alec was still laughing vulgarly. Wow, you've got wrinkles. You've aged. You were cute when you were younger, but marrying for looks was a mistake. Good thing I divorced you back then. Alec pointed at the faint laugh lines I was self-conscious about and laughed all by himself. I've always felt he was a bit immature, but now it's just creepy, like he's still a little kid. Oh, wait a minute, what was your name again? Oh, Averill? Betty? Let's see, oh yeah, Melissa. Look, just give up on me already. As you can see, I'm married. I started to say, but Alec wasn't listening to me. Can't believe you were able to stalk me with that face of yours. Don't you own a mirror? Or are your eyes rotten? Oh, maybe it's presbyopia? Let's make things clear. With your looks, there's no way you and I could start over. I didn't want to see you. In my memories, you were still cute. Don't tarnish my memories. Alec stuck out his tongue in jest. Our past is already tainted. I only remember fighting with Alec, and if it's possible, I'd remove those memories from my brain. I wasn't prepared to encounter Alec like this today. I wanted to say something back, but my mind went blank and no words came out. I clenched my fist tightly and looked away from him. Your face is all red. Oh right, Melissa, you always used to get so mad and turn red. It was cute when you were younger, but a red-faced angry old woman is just ugly. My face felt even hotter. I looked away, but Alec kept peering into my face. You shouldn't choose a marriage partner based on looks. After all, looks fade. Sorry, Melissa, for leaving you when looks were all you had. This time, I'm going to be happy. I chose my partner not just for her looks, but for what's inside. What's inside? I couldn't help but ask back. Yeah, the inside. You must have been able to sneak in because there are so many people, but don't you see that you don't belong here at a wedding? Get lost already. He gestured as if he was shooing a dog away. But Again, Alec didn't listen to my words. Stop it. If you keep disrupting the wedding, I'll call the police. What you're doing is called stalking. But, do you like me that much? If so, you should have come out in the open, and I might have considered you as an affair partner. Trying to crash my wedding is just too disappointing. Alec was loquacious, not giving me a chance to interject. He's always been talkative, but now he seemed overly excited. Breathing roughly, he finished speaking to me. What are you? A stalker or something? You disgust me. Go home already. I came here to celebrate the happily grinning bride and groom. I'm certainly not Alec's stalker. But I didn't feel like clearing up Alec's misunderstanding. Fine, I'll leave. Past anger and the confusion of suddenly encountering Alec just disappeared, and I answered emotionlessly. I had my bag with me, so I decided to leave without returning to the reception. I turned my back and Alec waved at me. Bye-bye. I turned around and asked one last question. You chose her for what's inside? Alec smirked nastily and nodded deeply. Yeah. She's really the best. There's no way you could compete. Is that so? Hearing just that, I walked away from Alec. The wedding venue was on a small hill. Surrounded by the clear sky and the sea, it was a beautiful location with no buildings around. However, it's hard to return to town without a car. I had planned to call Stuart for a pickup in a few hours, so I explained the situation to him. While waiting for Stuart, I sat on a bench outside the venue, quietly looking at the sky. Stuart was with Leon in a nearby park, so it would take some time for him to arrive. I had woken up early today, got ready, and even had my hair done at the salon. Alec laughed at me for looking older, but my son, Leon, told me I looked cute. I was so upset over the treatment Alec had given me, after putting so much effort into looking nice. 30 minutes had passed since I left the venue. I thought it was Stuart calling when my mobile phone rang, but the screen strangely showed Alec. My finger froze as I was about to press the call button. I hadn't been in contact with him at all since the divorce, so I hadn't even thought about his name still being in my phone book. I definitely didn't want to deal with Alec, so I decided to ignore the call. But the phone kept ringing. After about 3 rings, it stopped, only to start ringing again without a pause. What's this? Does he still have something to complain about? In no time, the missed calls had piled up to dozens. At this point, it's hard to tell who the stalker is. Checking my call history, I realized a colleague from work had also called. Interrupted by Alec's incessant ringing, it was resulting in a missed call notification. While fiddling with my phone, scared of accidentally making a call, I noticed a message from my colleague amidst the missed calls and managed to check it. The candle service. It seems the bride, Chanel, is upset because of my absence. The candle service was one of Chanel's special requests. She had tried to gather all the guests who had stepped out for a toilet break or a smoke, causing a small commotion when I didn't return. I had messaged my colleague that I had to leave due to an emergency, but I could imagine Chanel wouldn't be satisfied with that explanation. The voicemail Alec left was, "I thought you were stalking me. If you were really a guest, you could have just said so. I'm not mad, so just come back already. It'd be a waste not to eat the cake." The condescending tone of his hurried message made me even less inclined to return. What a hassle. With hundreds of people there, it wouldn't matter if I was missing. I vented my true feelings, thinking no one was around. Then, a car pulled into the parking lot. To my surprise, a woman in a pure white dress got out of the driver's seat. She looked exactly like a bride. Normally, brides get ready at the venue, so this was clearly unusual. I couldn't help but stare at her. Noticing my gaze, the woman gave me a kind smile. "Thank you for attending our wedding today." What? Misunderstanding, I forced a smile and explained. "Oh, I'm a colleague of the bride currently at the reception. Are you about to have your ceremony?" Lovely dress. Thank you. I've been looking forward to this day. Congratulations. Despite the pleasant atmosphere, I felt a sense of unease. I remembered Chanel bragging various things about the wedding. How she requested the highest quality catering, a dress by a famous designer. Her bragging wouldn't end and our break times were completely consumed by those topics. And one of them was the exclusive booking of the wedding venue. Normally, up to 6 couples could hold their ceremonies in a day. However, Chanel insisted on having her special day all to herself. I wondered if the woman had gotten the date wrong. The happily-looking woman confided a secret, saying, "Actually." Hearing this, I headed back to the venue I had just been kicked out of. It seemed like it would be more entertaining than any special performance. At the entrance of the banquet hall, Alec and Chanel were having an argument. Noticing me, Alec hurried over. "I've been waiting for you forever." Chanel, having been informed by Alec, glared at me. "So you know Alec? I heard you used to like him and followed him around. Saying you can't celebrate the marriage of someone you used to like and leaving? That's something middle or high schoolers would do. How inconsiderate." "Chanel, it was Alec who told me to leave. Don't be annoying. Can you not call my husband by his first name?" Alec avoided my gaze as soon as I looked at him. As if a casual lie could cover the truth. Right, I should have been more considerate. After all, Alec and I divorced over 10 years ago.
Excuse me? What did you say?
Chanel tilted her head in confusion. Obviously, Alec hadn't shared any inconvenient truths with her. Alec tried to silence me, but I spoke up anyway.
What do you mean? Alec and I were married.
Chanel's eyes widened in shock. Alec, sensing danger, shrank back like a scared kitten.
What? You used to be married? I didn't know about this. Unbelievable.
Before the wedding, Chanel often spoke about her ideal partner.
Someone with fair skin, a model-like face, who would grant all my wishes like a prince. And of course, he has to be utterly devoted to me.
A wish list that seemed pulled straight from a fairy tale. I had heard she had dated twice in the past, but she broke up with them because they merely glanced at another girl, screaming betrayal at the slightest provocation. She would never accept a history of divorce. Then Chanel, giddy with the notion of having found her Prince Charming, had married Alec after a brief courtship. It was Chanel's mistake for not looking into him more, despite her usual insistence on details. Alec hurried to cover up.
Chanel, it's not what you think. I did marry her, but it was a youthful mistake. A folly of youth, you know? And to prove it, we split up after about a year.
He tried to put his arm around Chanel's shoulder, only to be shrugged off.
I had pretty much forgotten she existed, and now I'm all about you, Chanel. It's actually her who's been bothering me. She kept staring at me during the ceremony, and it was really creepy. Come on, Chanel, Melissa is the annoying one. You know I wouldn't be interested in someone like her. Trust me.
Chanel's lips were clenched so tightly that they bled. She seemed to be holding back her anger.
I get it, Melissa is the annoying one. I mean, you knew it was Alec as soon as you saw the invitation, right? Did you dress up all fancy because you thought you'd see Alec? Talk about creepy. Thinking there might be a chance?
I had become the common enemy of Alec and Chanel. By berating me, Chanel seemed to have felt better and snuggled up to Alec artificially.
She's my stalker. Probably got mad knowing I was getting married. Lately, she's been following me around. It's been truly creepy. It was too much not matter how much she likes me. Stalking and then showing up at the wedding thinking there's a chance is just too creepy.
They laughed together. A vulgar laughter that didn't suit the beautiful bride and groom.
Melissa, I'm sorry. I know it must be hard to see me and Alec so happy, but it's unthinkable for someone to leave in the middle of the ceremony. Please, stay till the end to get over your feelings for Alec.
I was ridiculed thoroughly. I couldn't possibly celebrate their union now.
Chanel, I really didn't know the groom was Alec. Save your pointless act. It's true. Because he had a different last name back then.
Chanel, not understanding, was carefully enlightened by me.
He was Alec Brown before. Now, Alec Taylor. Do you understand why?
Alec was the first to pounce on me. Not that we were getting along, but Chanel, with a look of anger, pulled us apart. This made it easier to continue.
Alec has been married and divorced several times after divorcing me, even taking his wives' last names.
Alec yelled, "Shut up," but was immobilized by Chanel, who had thrown her arms around him. Chanel's grip tightened, and Alec began to moan in pain. Alec's history of divorces wasn't just once. It appears he had been married and divorced at least 5 times. Knowing the truth, Chanel's grip tightened around Alec to the point it seemed she might be breaking his spine. Alec couldn't even make a sound. To those unaware of the turmoil, they might appear as a passionately embracing bride and groom. The banquet staff, previously too intimidated to intervene, finally managed to stop Chanel. Chanel's fiery temper had evidently left the staff terrified. But they seemed to realize Alec's life was in danger if they didn't act. After a bit of coughing, Alec turned his fury on me.
Melissa! Secretly following me around and digging up unnecessary information. You're beyond what you call a stalker.
Although Alec's bloodshot eyes were frightening, I kept my composure. Come on, it's your wedding. Let's keep it calm. I looked towards the lobby and saw that she was prepared. Alec, congratulations on your wedding. I clapped loudly. Perplexed Alec and Chanel watched with a perplexed expression. Then a woman in her wedding dress approached. The shyly smiling woman was far more charming as a bride than Chanel. While I was blessing them with a full smile, Alec stepped back with a pale face. Isabel. The woman who had arrived at the venue in a wedding dress was named Isabel. According to her, she had been dating Alec until a few months ago. They even got engaged. But he broke up with her suddenly without giving a reason, and Isabel couldn't accept it. Upon investigating, she discovered he had another fiancé and was repeatedly getting married. Her unceasing smile in this situation was eerie. Though skeptical of her story at first, the evidence of their relationship and the detailed records of Alec's past she provided made disbelief impossible. I've always been by Alec's side. I know everything about him. So the stalker was you? Alec had actually been a victim of stalking. That's why he mistook me for the stalker. While Chanel and the staff were stunned, Isabel pulled Alec's arm. In place of the frozen staff, I pushed open the heavy doors to the banquet hall. Inside, the guests were tired of the lengthy and dull entertainment. The newly returned bride and groom were greeted with huge applause. Thank you, everyone, thank you. Isabel led Alec through the venue. Isabel radiated a happiness aura from her entire being. Alec, now utterly soulless, barely managed to stand. A light push on his index finger might topple him. Gradually, the applause thinned, and the room grew so quiet you wouldn't think it held hundreds of guests. Who are you? Finally, Chanel shouted. Lifting her dress, she stormed towards Isabel. A beautiful bride and an ugly bride faced off. I was the one promised to marry Alec. Chanel pulled on Alec's right arm, while Isabel clung to his left. Lies. It's not a lie. I presented the evidence Isabel had prepared to Chanel. Even after seeing it, Chanel screamed, "It's a lie," and threw the evidence away. A guest picked it up, and a game of telephone started spontaneously. While Isabel and Chanel fought, the whole venue quickly became aware of the situation. Even as the staff and both families tried to intervene, Chanel was too agitated to be stopped. Isabel laughed madly. Of course, the wedding couldn't continue, and the guests were practically kicked out. Alec, notably, had fainted on the floor. An incensed Chanel, not noticing Alec had collapsed, impressively trampled over his face. Isabel vanished after seemingly fulfilling her revenge. Though Chanel had been cheated on by Alec, she received no sympathy from anyone. Her disgrace at the wedding was too much to elicit even pity. Chanel came from a wealthy family, the only daughter. She dropped out of college and couldn't keep a job, so she was introduced to work at my company. Her only computer skill was internet browsing. Ignoring her simple tasks, she would bother us, busy with our work, endlessly bragging and complaining. A perfect example of self-centeredness. The forced attendance at her wedding, and our lack of fondness for her from the start, made sympathy impossible. Even Chanel's parents weren't on her side. Apparently, many guests were business contacts of her parents, who were furious at being embarrassed by her. Honestly, at least her parents could have defended her. But like Chanel, they must prioritize themselves above all. Like Chanel, they must prioritize themselves above all. Ironically, Alec should be thankful for the outcome, given he was supposed to be beaten up by Chanel. Yet for some reason, Alec showed up at my house, accusing me of stalking, when now it seemed he was the stalker. It's your fault. You past women ruined the wedding. Despite everything that happened, Alec is living with Chanel as planned, and yet he's complaining. You're happy you're married to Chanel, aren't you? No way. She's worthless. What? But you chose Chanel for her personality, didn't you? Well, yeah. I overlooked her looks and chose her for her wealth. That's a quality, right? Her family is well known around here for being rich.
But if her family's money isn't coming in because she's estranged from them, there's no point in being with her.
That's what I thought. I wondered if two self-centered people might get along, but normally, they'd clash. Alec was just pretending to be a prince, hiding his true self. He often complained about how boring the countryside was during our marriage, but he mentioned one good thing about it. The culture of respecting men still existed. Indeed, Alec was treated as an honored guest at my family's home, so he got carried away. Moreover, he said rural women are simple. He hasn't grown in over a decade. No matter how much anger I show, he comes begging to me with a completely changed attitude.
Melissa, do something. She's put GPS on my phone because she suspects me of cheating, and I'm locked up at home when I'm not at work. Actually, she quit her job and has time, so she follows me around and watches me sometimes. It's crazy, right?
That's crazy.
Right? She's the one who's crazy.
But it can't be helped. Alec, you would cheat right away if she didn't do that, wouldn't you? It's natural for him to be suspected, as he has no credibility. Alec plays the victim, but he is undoubtedly the perpetrator.
I can't even take a breather, let alone cheat. I hate this. I want to escape. Melissa, help me.
Alec is nothing but a blemish on my life. Even his attempts to evoke pity is just repulsive. Just as I was getting fed up, a screech like a beast's cry echoed from afar. However, the source of the cry, charging like a gorilla, was Chanel.
What are you doing here? How? You were out and I even left my phone at home.
Chanel pushed the pale-faced Alec aside and whispered a warning to me.
The GPS is also in his wallet and on his keychain, so I'm always watching him. Don't even think about stealing my husband.
I could imagine Alec wanting to cry over such suffocating living conditions. Still, I have no sympathy for a habitual cheater.
I wouldn't steal him. Be happy with Alec.
I answered with a smile. Chanel tried to take Alec back, hugging him, but he stubbornly resisted. I don't want to go back. Come on, Melissa. Deep down, you still love me, don't you? His confidence was baffling.
Love you? Impossible. I'm married too, you know.
The front door quietly opened. I had asked Stuart, my current husband, to wait inside, feeling awkward about introducing my ex to him. But he couldn't stay away any longer due to the noise outside.
Eek!
Alec shrieked at the sight of the towering Stuart looking down on him. Trembling as if he'd encountered a man-eating bear, I teased him for fun.
This man is being persistent. Can you do something?
Stuart's eyebrows twitched at my words. Just that was enough for Alec to cling to Chanel and make a quick escape. Alec, frightened by the gentle bear, never showed up in front of me again. Whether it's because of the bear or he's sticking to Chanel in their newlywed life, I don't know. Thus, my peaceful days returned. I'm not good with confrontations, Melissa. I didn't know what to do to help when you were in trouble. Sorry.
It's okay. You're protecting me, just being by my side, Stuart. Even with this look, there comes advantages. I always felt my size and intimidating presence were a flaw, but it turns out, just a glare can protect my family when needed. Not bad at all.
Stuart and I shared a smile. Then Leon, wielding a toy sword, bursted in.
I'll defeat the dinosaur.
Suddenly, it was time for a play fight. Stuart is always casted as a dinosaur. Ah, I'm defeated.
Got you! Mama, I came to save you. I defeated the scary dinosaur.
Stuart effortlessly lifted Leon onto his shoulders.
Brave sir, I won't cause trouble anymore. Please make me your ally. Okay. Let's protect Mama together. Yay!
I have two reliable heroes by my side. The sight of Big Stuart and little Leon playing together is something I cherish. I want to protect this simple daily happiness.
Hey Barbara, can't you reconsider?
Daniel is still in middle school. To leave him and move abroad. Barbara, the wife of her son, tilted her head slightly and frowned as if troubled. Daniel is plain and slow, and to be honest, it feels like he's not even our child. He seems to get along with you in an odd way, so please take good care of him. It's one thing to speak ill of oneself, but to say such words about her own son, Daniel, it made her tremble with anger. However, those feelings were suppressed, never turning into words, remaining in her heart. Daniel and I watched the car carrying the departing son and his family until it was out of sight, then looked up at the orange tree in the empty garden. As I wondered, Daniel pointed out that there were still a few left. My son Charles and his family had taken many oranges for memories, but a few remained on the branches. From a distance, it was hard to see clearly, but some of the fruit seemed to be slightly damaged. Does that mean they didn't want those oranges? As it got colder with a slight breeze, I suggested to Daniel that we go inside, but he shook his head slightly and turned to me, his face overflowing with tears. Dad and Mom don't want me because I'm slow. It's okay. You don't need to worry. I was furious. I closed my eyes, pondering what to do with this anger, and then pondered some more, firmly resolving to affirm and raise this child positively. My name is Susan. Lately, I've lost my appetite and have been feeling unwell. When I consulted a doctor about my unclear health issues, I was advised to get more nutrition. Even with the vague advice to get more nutrition, I wondered what exactly I should eat, considering going to a steakhouse every day. But that would never be sustainable with any amount of living expenses, so I decided to make balanced meals every day. No, that would be too much hassle to keep up. So, I decided to make it a point to eat the oranges planted in my garden. Honestly, I never really cared for the oranges planted in the yard before. I hadn't paid much attention to them every year. Usually, I left the fruit for the birds to eat or just cleaned up whatever fell to the ground, but this year, after seeing a TV infomercial about easy-to-use pruning shears, I was full of motivation and bought them. Just when I was determined to start picking the oranges, I ended up hurting my back. It was supposed to be easy according to the sales pitch, but apparently not for someone with a bad back. If there's a house in a quiet residential area known for its large orange tree, that would be ours. Our orange tree has years when it bears lots of fruit and years when it doesn't, and this year, the branches are laden with oranges. It's just the year I was determined to eat a lot of them. But what to do with my injured back? Just when I was thinking that, my son and his family came to visit at the perfect time. When I explained the situation to my son, he immediately said, "All right, I'll pick them." And he rushed out to the garden. My son and my grandson, Christopher, were using a long-handled pruning shear to joyfully pick oranges from the branches. "Wow, Christopher! You got a big one!" My son skillfully cut the oranges from the branches and had his son pick them up. As for me, I was sitting by the window overlooking the orange tree, staring at a chessboard with my other grandson, Daniel. Daniel was looking intently at the chess pieces laid out on the board, lost in thought, seemingly oblivious to the noise of Charles and Christopher gathering oranges in the garden. It seems I was so focused that I didn't even hear Charles and Christopher making noise while gathering oranges in the garden. When Christopher, the older brother, quietly placed an orange beside Daniel and then turned to me, he put his index finger to his lips in a gesture for silence. He didn't want to disturb his brother, who was deeply engrossed in the game. That was the kind of kindness Christopher had. "Charles, lunch is ready." "Yeah, thanks. We'll be right there." Perhaps one reason my son and his wife visit my house several times a month is because my husband had passed away early. My son's wife, Barbara, is a down-to-earth woman who naturally takes over the kitchen in our house to prepare lunches for everyone. Daniel and I were invited to join them for the meal, but Daniel remained silent, staring at the chessboard, unwilling to move. When I gently touched Daniel's shoulder, "Huh?" he looked up in surprise, saying, "Grandma, will you play chess with me after lunch?" "Of course. Let's go." Barbara, Charles, and Christopher were enjoying their meal while watching TV, laughing together. The TV featured a special on a high school soccer player belonging to a famous high school, and Charles pointed at the TV, tapping Christopher on the shoulder. "Hey, look, Christopher. The high school you're going to is on TV." Christopher has always been athletically gifted, shining in every game he plays. Daniel took up soccer as well, but wasn't quite as skilled. He couldn't outshine his brother. Barbara looked at Christopher with joy and said, "I heard from a friend that Christopher is quite famous among middle schoolers. He's really good at soccer. It seems his name has even spread to other schools." She looked even happier than Christopher, the subject of the conversation. I couldn't help but clear my throat and glance at Daniel's expression. He looked somewhat lonely, slowly slurping up his pasta one strand at a time. Now that Christopher has a scholarship for soccer in high school, it's Daniel's turn. With a promising brother like Christopher, Daniel will surely improve quickly too. Right. Christopher and Daniel, let's play soccer in the park after lunch. But Charles, isn't Daniel going to continue with chess? Oh, right. You haven't finished yet? I informed Charles that the game was still ongoing. Then, I suggested if they'd like to join us in chess, though playing soccer is also great. Charles and Barbara exchanged glances and started laughing together. You're joking, right? Playing chess by the window on such a sunny day? What an unhealthy hobby. Charles, that's a bit harsh on Susan's only hobby. Both of them seemed to mock me and Daniel, but I didn't want to argue and risk spoiling our family relationship, so I nodded along and started washing up in the kitchen. I peeled the freshly picked oranges, placed them on a plate, and brought them out. Christopher and Daniel started eating them, laughing together. I discreetly approached Charles and tapped him lightly on the head from behind. Hey, you know Daniel isn't much into sports like soccer, right? He enjoys playing chess, so don't say weird things. Did I say something wrong? Charles, seeming neither concerned nor remorseful, took the ball and went to the nearby park with Christopher and Barbara. Left behind, Daniel and I returned to our seats by the window. Sitting in front of the sunlit chessboard, Daniel casually looked up at the orange tree. There are still a lot of oranges left, huh? Yes, do you want some more? Daniel shook his head slightly and then turned his gaze back to the chessboard, refocusing his attention. He has a strong ability to concentrate. At this point, I can't predict how Daniel will grow up, but I have a feeling he'll take a path quite different from his brother Christopher's. And so years passed since then. On a sunny day, Daniel and I were again eating oranges picked from the garden. After Charles finished bringing in few small boxes to my house, he stood by the window with a gentle smile, looking up at the orange tree. Sorry, Mom, please take good care of Daniel. I pondered over how to respond. While caressing the oranges picked from the garden, I sighed. Christopher, having been recognized for his soccer talent at his new high school, was scouted by an overseas club team. I, knowing little about soccer, couldn't grasp the significance of the team that scouted my grandson. But when I heard Charles was ready to quit his job and move abroad, I realized this was a big deal. With assistance promised by the scouting team for their life abroad, Barbara was already excited about the overseas move. Every time we met, she would say, I'm really interested in foreign cultures. She was already studying the culture of the country through books. I had assumed the whole family would move abroad, but they asked me to raise Daniel alone in my house. Christopher was initially surprised and was opposed to the idea. Think about it, Christopher. Wouldn't Daniel be happier living here with Grandma than in an unfamiliar environment? Don't you think so? But Barbara convinced him by saying so. And today, after moving all of Daniel's belongings into my house, they were set to leave on an afternoon flight. Daniel looked sad as he checked the contents of a cardboard box filled with his clothes. Charles and Christopher, knowing they wouldn't return to this house for a while, picked many oranges from the garden tree as a final memory. As the tree's branches became bare with each orange picked, it started to look naked. Daniel, Grandma might not feel well sometimes, so help her out, okay? And work hard on your studies too. Charles said this to Daniel as he cheerfully bid farewell. Though I knew it was already decided, I couldn't help but pull Barbara aside to a spot away from Christopher and Daniel and started speaking in a low voice. Hey Barbara, can't you reconsider? Daniel is still attending middle school. To leave him and move abroad. Barbara tilted her head slightly and frowned as if troubled. Daniel is plain and slow, and to be honest, it feels like he's not even our child. Since he seems to get along with you in a strange way, please take good care of him. It's one thing to speak ill of oneself, but to say such words about your own son, Daniel, made me tremble with anger. However, those feelings remained pressed deep into my heart, never turning into words. Daniel and I watched the car carrying my departing son and his family until it disappeared from view, then turned to look up at the orange tree in the empty garden. As I wondered about the tree, Daniel spoke and pointed out. There are a few left. Charles and the others had taken many oranges as memories, but a few remained on the branches. From a distance, it was unclear, but some appeared slightly damaged. Does that mean they didn't want those oranges? As the breeze grew colder, I suggested to Daniel that we go inside. He shook his head slightly and turned to me, his face overflowing with tears. Dad and Mom don't want me because I'm slow. It's okay. There's nothing to worry about. I was furious. I closed my eyes, pondering what to do with this anger, then resolved to affirm and nurture this child positively. 9 years have passed since then. Beside the chessboard by the window, I looked up at the orange tree in the garden. The birds know best when the oranges are ripe, pecking at the fruit when it's time. I used this as a cue to start harvesting. Stepping out from the window to the garden, I picked a low-hanging fruit. It was free of insect damage and had a nice color. After the doorbell rang, I called out loudly, "It's open!" To my surprise, I was greeted by an unexpected visitor as heavy footsteps approached. Mom, it's been a while. Where's Daniel? It's really been a long time. What brings you here all of a sudden? Well, I saw Daniel's achievements in the newspaper. Isn't it amazing? Finally, he feels like our son. As I sighed heavily and sat back down in front of the chessboard, Barbara asked, Where's Daniel? He's reading a chess magazine in his room. He's a pro now, so try not to disturb him. Since our parting 9 years ago, Daniel and I played chess daily, and he gradually showed his talent, eventually becoming a professional chess player. The journey was tough, but we persevered together. Though he never said it, Daniel might have wanted to prove something to the parents who left him. Recently, Daniel won a major title as a pro chess player, making headlines. I hadn't told Charles or Barbara, but they must have found out and hurried back. Soon, Daniel came out of his room. He had grown taller and more robust over the 9 years, the perfect picture of health. Charles, seeing his son all grown up, said, It's been a while. Saying this, he put his arm around Daniel's shoulder, and from behind, Barbara also. You've become so admirable. Smiled tenderly, as if completely contented. Now I'm willing to live with you. Now that you're a respectable adult, it's your turn to help out your dad and mom with their lives. I'm apparently not your child, so I have no obligation to help. The conversation sounded almost like a comedy, making me burst out laughing. Charles, tapping Daniel on the shoulder, looked puzzled. It seemed like the words were completely unexpected. The audacity to offer to live together after 9 years was astonishing. What's wrong? Are you being stubborn after this long reunion? You must have been lonely living with Grandma all this time. Don't worry, we'll live together from now on. What are you talking about? Live together? I'm not a child anymore. Why should I live with you? Barbara, pulling Charles away from the frozen embrace, said. What are you saying? We haven't been able to contact Christopher for years, and our life is in shambles. We've been living off Christopher's soccer income, and now we have no savings. What does that have to do with me? After all the effort we put into supporting Christopher's soccer, he suddenly disappeared. We didn't know what to do. It's impossible for us to start working now, and you're the only one we can rely on. If you're looking for Christopher, he's here in this house. Hey, Christopher. At Daniel's casual call, Christopher appeared from the kitchen, wearing a cute cat apron, holding an orange, and skillfully peeling it with a knife. What's up? Christopher, with an innocent expression, surprised Charles and Barbara by being there. Christopher, why are you here? Seems like there's a lot we need to talk about, so just sit down and wait. I'll cut some oranges for us. As Christopher served the oranges on a plate to Charles and Barbara. I prepared coffee for everyone. Christopher began to share that, although he was initially enthusiastic about his soccer career and contract with an overseas club, his experiences abroad gradually sparked an interest in becoming an interpreter. Upon hearing Christopher's dream, Charles, being an interpreter won't earn you as much as a professional soccer player. That's not acceptable. Dismissed it without even listening. Disappointed by his parents, who seemed only to care about the money he could bring in rather than his dreams, Christopher lost interest in soccer. He secretly contacted Daniel and me and returned to our town. Now, he's working at a language school while studying to become an interpreter. After explaining this, Christopher sat up straight and faced Charles and Barbara directly. I'm truly grateful that you took me abroad for soccer. But I've found a dream I want to pursue more than soccer. If you're going to deny that, I'd rather you not be involved in my life. Not be involved? Do you know how much we sacrificed to support your soccer career abroad? He reflected on how much time he had sacrificed as a father to support Christopher's soccer. He passionately explained how much he and Barbara, Christopher's mother, had hoped and expected to make Christopher a top soccer player. Christopher, your dad quit his job to support your soccer. And now, you're giving that up for a job as an interpreter? It's not too late to go back to the club team. Right, that's a good idea. If life gets tough until you succeed in soccer, Daniel can support us. He's a famous chess player now, after all. The conversation seemed somewhat detached from reality. Perhaps even Charles and Barbara realized the absurdity of their words. Despite understanding the unfairness of their situation, fear of not being able to survive without such plans seemed to drive their irrational statements. The reason no one spoke up wasn't because the discussion had concluded, but rather because the end point of the conversation had become unclear. I poured coffee into each of the empty cups. The scent of coffee filled the living room, which was enveloped in silence. Daniel quietly shifted his gaze to the chessboard by the window. After Dad and Mom left for abroad, I played chess almost every day. Left for abroad? That makes us sound like the bad guys. Do you think you would have been happy if you had come with us? You're right. If I had lived with parents like you, I might have lost sight of what I was striving for, just like Christopher did. This provocative stance immediately angered Barbara. She stood up and lunged at Daniel, prompting me to quickly step in front of him to block her. Barbara glared at me and shouted at Daniel.
Move! How dare you speak to your parents like that?
Speak to your parents? It's been 9 years. 9 years! You didn't come back to see Daniel even once in all that time. Can you imagine how long these years have been for him?
We are their parents, you know? Can you believe that children wouldn't help their parents? Christopher and Daniel are saying they're abandoning us when we're in trouble.
Charles, not wanting to be outdone by Barbara's intensity, stood up to face me as well.
Exactly. It's irresponsible not to help when your parents are in trouble. It's a child's duty.
You're talking about duty? I mentioned I was feeling a bit unwell 9 years ago, remember? Yet, you chose to ignore that and went abroad. It's shameful to change your tune when it suits you.
But that's because...
Charles mumbled awkwardly, his gaze darting around, not sure what to do. Christopher approached Daniel with a calm voice and apologized. I'm really sorry for everything. Dad, we've decided we want to cut ties with you and Mom. Can you just leave us alone from now on?
Don't joke around.
What do you take your parents for? Use us when convenient and discard us when done? You're going to abandon us irresponsibly while we're struggling with our lives? Involuntarily, I found myself shouting.
That's not it.
My voice might have echoed throughout the quiet neighborhood, possibly heard by the neighbors. But I couldn't worry about the neighbors at such a moment. I grasped Christopher and Daniel's hands firmly in mine. Holding them by my sides, I could feel them trembling slightly. Despite their calm demeanor, they were frightened by their biological parents' sudden visit. I knew I had to express the anger on their behalf. It was time to voice the feelings Christopher and Daniel had harbored towards their parents. It's the adults' job to work for their children, not the other way around.
We're the parents. We are a family.
After abandoning a young Daniel and selfishly deciding on Christopher's potential, like you have any rights to say that. How are you their family? At my words, Charles's eyes widened in shock, and he reached out to grab my collar. Instinctively, I braced for any potential violence by curling up defensively. However, Daniel quickly stepped in front of me and effortlessly lifted Charles, sending him spinning through the air. And before you know it, Charles was lying on the ground, looking up at Daniel. In a state of shock and lying down, Charles is too astonished to say anything. He probably never imagined that the once frail Daniel could throw him. I won't allow anyone to harm our family. Being completely thrown can make a person feel utterly defeated. Charles, lying on the ground and looked down upon by Daniel, must have felt a deep sense of embarrassment. Barbara rushed to Charles with a worried look, but he got up, saying, I'm fine. However, the aggression he had shown earlier had vanished. Voices from outside could be heard. It seemed the neighbors had gathered, alerted by the shouting from our house. Charles and Barbara exchanged glances and hurriedly left the house, their departure marked by their pitiful retreat. Their future, after such a humiliating exit, remained unknown. Relying on Christopher's income from soccer, Charles and Barbara had little in the way of qualifications or work experience, making it difficult for them to find decent employment at their age. 2 years later, Christopher successfully became an interpreter. His work took him to various places, keeping him busy. Daniel continued to diligently study and practice chess, striving to master the game. Both brothers excelled in their respective fields. As for me, with my grandchildren grown and independent, I started teaching at a children's chess club, aiming to nurture their interests. Having loved chess since childhood, I had once dreamed of becoming a professional player. Despite joining chess clubs in middle and high school and competing in numerous matches, I recognized my limitations and eventually lost faith in my own talent. Even though friends and family encouraged me, saying I had talent and should keep at it, I lost the ability to believe in myself. Having experienced the pain of not accepting my own immaturity, regretting giving up on my dreams, and feeling a tightness in my chest, I had a strong desire to convey something important to the children in my chess class. After all, I had successfully raised Daniel, an exceptional professional player. Although it's often challenging, I find fulfillment in guiding each child, focusing on their individual hearts and potential. Christopher and Daniel live harmoniously with me, sharing these values. I deeply respect Christopher and Daniel, each thriving and fulfilling their dreams. One day, after a long while, Christopher and Daniel offered to pick oranges in our garden. As I've gotten older, reaching for the high oranges has become more of a chore, so I was grateful for the help. Christopher stretched the pruning shears as high as he could, trying to gather all the oranges for my chess club students. "This is quite the tedious task," I remarked with a smile, solving chess problems by the window. I remembered how I used to challenge Daniel with my own chess problems, but now, as a professional player, he would present me with puzzles and watch amused as I pondered over them. "This one's tough." It's a joyful realization that Daniel, whom I taught chess, has far surpassed me in skill. Hearing laughter, I saw Christopher and Daniel gathering oranges with joy. "Grandma? What's up?" "There's something I've always wondered about every year." Daniel pointed to an orange located at the very top of the tree. "That branch is always out of reach with the pruning shears, so picking from it is forbidden. Shouldn't we pick all of them for your chess students?" I stopped Christopher from fetching a ladder from the shed. "Leaving a few oranges on the tree keeps it from looking completely bare." I chuckled. "Leave that one. It's meant to be left there." I used to look at the remaining oranges after Dad and Mom left us and wonder if I was like those unwanted fruits. Daniel's face showed a hint of sadness. I remained silent, focusing on the chess problem. "Not just for oranges, but there's an old custom of leaving one fruit on the tree instead of picking them all." Daniel came over to me and watched as I pondered over a chess problem he had created. His expression bore the same youthful look as it did back then. "There's an old custom of leaving one fruit on the tree as a token of gratitude and hope for future harvests." Gratitude and hope. Moreover, it's left as food for the birds to help them through the harsh winter. The last remaining orange isn't unwanted, it's actually the most special one. Special. I see, so that's how it was. Daniel whispered softly, and I gently stroked his head. Daniel, who has grown quite a bit, doesn't try to escape from my hands and allows me to continue stroking him without resistance. Well, what to do now? This chess problem presented by such a dear grandchild. It's too difficult for me to understand at all. Maintaining my dignity as a respected chess figure in his eyes was crucial, yet finding the solution seemed impossible in the moment. As I pondered, stroking Daniel's head, I hoped for a way out of this predicament, wishing for more such special moments to continue indefinitely. "You're replaceable. You're fired," Elaine, the president's daughter, spat out at me. I had reached my breaking point. Without retorting to her words, I quietly accepted my dismissal. "Understood. If I must leave, then so be it." Emotion had drained from me. I responded in a voice lacking any spirit. "Well, goodbye then." She waved at me, her face brightening with relief. I started preparing to leave the company I had once been grateful for. Then, I shall resign. On my last day, I went to say goodbye to Elaine. It was already too late for her. Not only was I leaving, but I also decided to leave a parting gift for the company. Would you reconsider your resignation? Elaine asked me, tearfully. Ridiculous. She was the one who fired me. I am Bonnie, 40 years old. Living alone in urban, I'm single and have devoted my life to my job. My parents live in another state, quietly enjoying their retirement. Both my parents were salespeople, which probably influenced me. From a young age, I was good at negotiating and getting along with people, whether getting extra prizes from the candy store or winning over my classmates' mothers for fancy birthday gifts. I had always wanted to use my strengths in a sales career. Eventually, as an adult, I worked in various sales roles before joining this staffing agency through a mid-career hire. In this competitive industry, our small company struggled to sustain profits without contracts from large corporations. Amidst that, I was always the top in new contracts, labeled as the company's promising newcomer, which became my confidence and success. However, I also faced persistent harassment from Elaine, the president's daughter. She had once been in sales and enjoyed popularity as the president's daughter, but now, working in administration, she seemed to take her lack of fulfillment out on me with relentless jealousy-driven harassment. I'm off now. I would routinely report before leaving the office to visit clients. That day, I had a packed schedule with client appointments, so I quickly finished lunch with coffee at the office before heading out. Bonnie, if you use the hot water from the pot for your coffee, at least refill it before you leave. Elaine chided me. Sorry, I'm in a rush. Could you top it up for me? She asked as she came to refill the water boiler, part of her administrative duties. I hadn't used much water, and I made sure to use it before everyone's lunchtime, so there was still plenty left. Honestly, everyone complains that there's always less water after you use it. She griped. Really? I don't use much, but I'll be more careful. I replied. With an appointment waiting, I couldn't linger and quickly left the office. During a meeting with a client, an email was sent to all employees from Elaine. It read, "To all staff, for the pleasant use of communal resources, please adhere to the rules." Recently, some inconsiderate employee has been using a lot of the pot's water without refilling it. Although it's just one person, we ask everyone to use the company's resources responsibly. I thought, this is about me, isn't it? The email implied it was just one person, so if a witch hunt started at the office, Elaine would surely point fingers at me. Ridiculous. I still remember her poor attitude from my first greeting at the company. She must be really bored to bother with such petty harassment. I had no choice but to get used to her antics. After finishing the day's appointments, I returned to the office to submit my end-of-day report. It was past 7 p.m. Usually, no one is around at the headquarters at this time, but Elaine was still there. Oh, Elaine, you're still here? Wow, Bonnie, you were still working? She asked, clearly surprised as I approached. Sorry to startle you. Yes, I'm surprised. Were you really working this late, or were you out drinking? I wasn't drinking. It just got late because I had many places to visit. What I wanted to ask was why she was still at the office at this hour. But I couldn't say that. After all, being the president's daughter, she had a habit of bullying others by exploiting their weaknesses. I'm heading home now, Elaine. Don't stay too late yourself. Just go home already. Sigh, another day drained by unnecessary issues. But something was bothering me. I couldn't help but wonder why Elaine was staying so late, and why she got puzzled as I spoke to her. Bonnie, can I talk to you for a moment? Elaine asked. What is it? I replied, it's almost the end of the month, right? I need to check something about the new client acquisitions. She said, okay. I'll be back at the office by 5 p.m. The next day, as I came to the office as usual, what Elaine had mentioned felt unnatural. Why would an admin staff be concerned about the sales department's client numbers? That's typically the responsibility of the sales manager, not admin. The day was packed with appointments again. A company I regularly visit wanted to start a new project and needed staff, so they asked our company for assistance, resulting in another new contract for me. That client is a major call center expanding rapidly, and my strong relationship with their representative means they contact me whenever they need staffing support. Back at the office, after reporting the new contract to my boss, I went to meet Elaine, who had been waiting.
I'm back. You mentioned something about a client this morning. What's up?
I asked.
Bonnie, are you securing these new contracts by forming deep relationships with the clients?
She inquired. What? I was taken aback by her unexpected question. No, of course not. I stammered.
Is that so? Well, if that's the case, then it's fine.
Is that all?
Yes, that's it.
She replied. It felt weird. She waited all this time just to ask me that? While I was out working hard, she seemed to have nothing better to do. I don't feel comfortable about your question. Is something wrong? I asked.
Nothing's wrong.
She said, her expression mocking. Then why ask such a thing?
I find it strange. Someone like you getting so many clients.
She said. To me, it wasn't strange at all. It was due to my effort and expertise. What do you mean by someone like me? I asked.
You don't seem like the sales type. I mean, with my looks and privileged background, I fit the sales role, but you don't, Bonnie.
She implied. Sure, Elaine was attractive and had the president as her parent, seemingly living a charmed life. However, that's not what makes someone good at sales. Are you suggesting that because of my looks, I'm getting clients through personal relationships? I questioned.
I didn't say that directly.
She laughed. Feeling personally attacked, I left the office, passing by the laughing Elaine. I was so upset, I cried all the way home. As the month end approached, it was time to report this month's new client acquisitions and progress. Today was the day for that meeting. I had worked hard this month. With referrals from a major company and new clients met through acquaintances, I had secured 3 contracts, feeling very satisfied with my performance. Some months are dry, but this month, I felt proud of my achievements.
This month I've acquired 3 new clients, bringing my total to 12.
It was my turn to report my performance, so I shared as usual. But then the room started buzzing.
What's going on?
I whispered to my colleague David, sitting next to me. He is a friendly guy I've been close with since we started together, and quietly filled me in.
The documents say something different. What?
I checked my papers and they matched what I had just reported. However, his copy showed my new client count as 0, with a note saying there were issues with my sales acquisition methods under investigation.
What's this? Let's talk about it later. We should continue the meeting.
David advised, so I followed his lead and got through the meeting. I asked him for more details afterwards.
Why were my documents different from everyone else's?
Elaine prepared them, so I'm not sure. At that point, I understood. It was harassment from her.
Elaine prepared them, I see.
I took the documents David had and went to confront Elaine. Elaine, I need to talk to you.
What's up? Don't look so scary.
She said, this document, what is it? It's false, right? This is too much, even for harassment. I found myself raising my voice at her without realizing it. I was that angry. Then she said something shocking.
Bonnie, do you know what happens when you talk to me like that?
What?
You're replaceable. You're fired.
She spat out. I felt myself crumbling, exhaustion washing over me. After a heated argument, I found myself saying, understood. I'll leave, then. The intense argument in the office had made me the talk of the company. Despite contributing so much, why was I facing this? But I had said I would leave. What about my living expenses starting tomorrow? That thought drained all my motivation. Deeply upset, I got a call from David, who was worried about me.
I didn't realize it was that serious, sorry. I couldn't back you up as your colleague.
It's okay. Elaine's harassment has been ongoing since I joined. Still, the company will take a big hit losing someone with your clientele. Are you really quitting? His words made me reconsider. But the opponent wasn't just any employee. She was the president's daughter, with considerable influence. I guess so. I'm confident in my sales record, and I'll do sales at another company. That's all I have. I see. But here's a personal piece of advice. Don't just quit. If you're leaving anyway, why not pay her back? She's not that great, even if she's the president's daughter. Hearing that, I thought, maybe he's right. Being a competitive person, I couldn't just leave after all the harassment from Elaine, as he suggested. I thought about what kind of payback I could give during my remaining time before resigning. I also decided to start looking for a new job. Thanks, David. Your words sparked a great idea. Plus, I'm going to start job hunting. I told him, that's good to hear. Personally, I wish you'd stay, but if you're leaving, it might be fun to give Elaine a bit of trouble as a parting gift. He said, you might be right. I mused. After hanging up with David, I dove into my job search and decided to use my remaining paid leave. I had a lot accumulated due to rarely taking time off. I went to Elaine to tell her about my plans. Elaine, thanks for deciding to fire me the other day. She seemed surprised by my attitude, probably expecting me to be depressed. What's with that attitude? She asked. Did you think I'd be down? No, but you're tougher than I thought. Yes, I am. By the way, I cut her off mid-sentence to tell her I'd be using my accrued leave. Paid leave? I won't allow it. You should just leave quickly since you're fired. Is she an idiot? She doesn't even realize the problem with her statement. Do you not know? You can't just fire someone easily, and you can't deny paid leave without a special reason. Fine, take it then. She relented easily. It wasn't as satisfying as I hoped, but I planned to use my leave to execute a great idea. Thank you. I'll come back to the office on my last day to say goodbye. Why bother with that attitude? You don't need to come back. I looked her in the eyes and gave her a sly smile. Just wait and see, Elaine. You'll be in for a surprise. I started to feel a bit excited. I then scheduled appointments to say goodbye to all our clients. I wasn't using my leave to rest, but to execute a plan that would lead to my next move. I decided to use all 30 days of my leave for this purpose and as payback to Elaine. I received regretful responses from many clients. When I explained my resignation to our biggest client, they were indignant. If you leave, we'll end our dealings with your company and shift our business to wherever you go. They said. I didn't need to be honest with clients, but I wanted them to stop dealing with my soon-to-be former company. That turned out to be more effective than I imagined, with all clients reacting the same way. I had to admit, it was a brilliant idea. Imagining Elaine's future distress made me feel quite relieved already. One day, while I was using my paid leave, Elaine called my cell phone. Bonnie, all the clients you were handling are suddenly ending their contracts with us. Did something happen? I don't know anything about that. I feigned ignorance. She probably didn't imagine I was contacting clients during my leave. She seemed too nonchalant. It's strange. It's not like they would stop dealing with our company just because you left, right? Well, I was just a representative. My leaving shouldn't influence our company's contracts that much. I know that. But it's strange. One after another, they're ending the contracts. Probably due to the recession. She mused. I almost laughed at how clueless she was. My plan was working. Then, I received a call from a top client. They wanted to discuss a possible headhunting offer. An unexpected development. I decided to meet with them. First, I called David. Since it was his idea that inspired me, I thought I should tell him. Hey, how are you? I'm fine. But I have something to report. What happened? Remember our talk? I came up with a plan.
If I'm quitting anyway, why not get back at Elaine? He seemed almost to say, that sounds fun. As he eagerly listened to the story, I explained everything to our clients, and they all said they'd move their contracts to wherever I go next. Bonnie, you're incredible, a real sales pro. I'm grateful, but I feel a bit guilty, yet impressed with myself. Thanks to you, David. Though I knew it complicated things for him, who was still at the company, I vowed to repay his kindness somehow. As I completed informing all clients, I decided to accept the headhunting offer. That company was a major client of my soon-to-be former company, so their contract cancellation was a significant blow. The company that headhunted me was setting up a new subsidiary in staffing and wanted me to handle their sales. With my new job secured, my mission was complete. On my last day, I went to the office to say goodbye. I've appreciated working with you. Elaine seemed off. That's the least of our problems. What happened? Turns out, all the projects I managed were cancelled at the request of the clients. The company was facing issues due to a significant drop in revenue. Dad's so angry with me. What do I do now? She collapsed, crying. What to do? This happened because you decided to fire me, right? I looked down at the crying her and said, I'm being blamed by Dad and the sales director. They're saying it's my fault Bonnie was fired and that I should fix the sales drop. But I can't do that. She was crying like a child, but I was satisfied with the payback I had achieved. Elaine, remember how you said my appearance wasn't right for sales and that I secured deals through personal relationships? Maybe this is karma. I'm sorry for that. I did reflect on it afterward. Reflect? Too late for that. I didn't feel any reflection from you. And that's not all you did to me. Maybe you should try contacting the clients yourself to recover the sales. Though I doubt you can. I can't do sales. She used to be in sales. What is she talking about? Weren't you in sales before? Oh, I see. You were removed because you couldn't do the job? She just sat there, her face a mess with tears, unable to speak. I had nothing more to do there, so I decided to leave. Well, I'll be resigning now, Elaine. Can't you reconsider your resignation? Our company's sales are in trouble. No, thank you. Thus, I left the company I had worked at for years. According to David, after my resignation, Elaine was blamed for the negative impact on sales caused by firing me. That affected the employees' bonuses and led to complaints, resulting in her being forced out of the company. She's been now idle at home. I was enjoying success at the new company that headhunted me. One day, I heard from David that he too had left the company. I explained the situation to my new company and managed to get him hired. We were working together again, striving side by side. It was fun to work with a former colleague, and we were gradually securing contracts with the clients I used to deal with at my previous company. Thanks to it, I won a newcomer award this month and felt very fulfilled. The idea of caring for an old woman or dealing with high school kids, what a nuisance. There's no room for a baby here, right? You should leave. I was a teenager, jerked around by my selfish brother and his wife. But, in an unexpected turn, my life changed for the better. My name is Riley. Lately, at 40, it seems like gravity's winning the battle, my cheeks sagging into a slight bulldog look. Oh dear. Is it hard to be against aging? However, reminds me, my mother never really had sagging skin or wrinkles. Wish I had inherited that. I think she was quite beautiful. After divorcing my father over his affair when I was young, she raised my older brother Alexander and me on her own, until one day. Suddenly, she collapsed with a brain disease. Alexander was a freshman in high school, and I was in middle school. My mother woke up, but was paralyzed from the waist down and struggled to speak. She mostly seemed lost in a daze. That's when my trials began. After learning about her condition, what are we going to do now? Alexander quickly said, I thought, we'll support her together. But, Alexander said, I can't handle caregiving. Mom wouldn't want a man taking care of her, right? I have to study, so you handle it all. And he just dumped it all on me. As a middle schooler, I had no idea how to care for someone. I couldn't even imagine the workload or how hard it would be, just felt anxious about the future. Could I really take care of her all by myself? Not long ago, I was just a kid, spoiled by her. The only adult I could turn to was my father, who had abandoned us, and I didn't even know how to reach him. I learned for the first time that she hadn't even received child support from her husband. Even if I could contact him, he would have probably abandoned us again. Knowing the hardships she faced working day and night pained me. Moreover, she was young and ineligible for care insurance, so we couldn't get proper care services. Though we managed living expenses with welfare, there was hardly any external support. There might have been better systems in place, but as a middle schooler, I couldn't understand the bureaucratic paperwork. I just followed what the hospital advised, processing paperwork as told. Yet, Alexander turned a blind eye to me, leaving not only mother's care but all household chores to me. Living in the same house, he enjoyed leisure, sleeping whenever he wanted, while I gave up studying hard and friendships, often sleepless due to caring for my mother. Thus, my teenage years dedicated to household chores and caring for her, I was thrust upon me by Alexander. It happened the year after my mother fell ill. Suddenly, I'm dropping out of high school. Alexander announced. I couldn't help but hope he might assist with the mother's care. I was in my second year of middle school, needed study harder. I needed help, but what he said next was unbelievable. Got a girl pregnant. I'm marrying her and we'll live here. What? Turns out, he had impregnated a classmate. Dropping out to raise the child in our home. A person who wouldn't even care for his own mother, how could he care for a baby? A child making a child, that's what it seemed like. I protested loudly. I don't want to live with you. But, don't worry, I won't bother you. He just laughed it off with a nonchalant attitude. Of course, I couldn't believe those words. For the first time, I wanted to escape. But back then, I was powerless. A month later, Alexander's girlfriend, Stella, moved in. At first, I know it's tough at home. I'll help. She was saying nice things to me, but as expected, within 3 days, I can't strain myself because of the baby. She had me fetching even a cup of coffee. It's no surprise, considering she chose to be Alexander's wife. The high school dropouts stayed home mostly, doing nothing for my mother. When I rushed home to care for her, "What's for dinner?" That's how they would ask me. Moreover, at night, they'd make noise, robbing me of my precious sleep. It's no wonder I lost 10 pounds after Stella arrived. Eventually, Alexander started working part-time at a grocery store, reducing their late-night disturbances, but then Stella's baby was born. Now, it was the baby's cries all night. Honestly, even being told she was my niece, I couldn't find her cute, given my feelings towards Alexander and Stella. I might sound cold, but back then, I was struggling with my studies, trying not to take out my frustration on my mother. I was still a child, with no capacity to adore Alexander's child. Despite being on the edge, I managed to get into high school, thanks to my teacher's extra help. Not the school I wanted, but the closest one with lower standards though. Not ideal, but better than not going at all. The money saved from Alexander dropping out of high school was used for my tuition. Maybe that's one thing to thank him for. I believed things would get easier once I started high school. That's what I hoped. Then, right before starting high school, one day, "Hey, Riley, how about this place?" "Huh?" Stella showed me a pamphlet for a condominium. I thought for a moment they were moving out now that they had a child. However, it was all for single living. "This one's close to a grocery store, good for a girl like you, near a busy street, safer." "Stella, I don't plan on moving." "Huh?" She asked back with a smile, but her eyes weren't laughing. I felt pressured, as if I had no choice. But, okay, I understand. I couldn't just say, "We should consider my mother." "Just take her with you." "That's impossible. I have nowhere to go." I'm helping you look for a place. Just find a part-time job or something. That's terrible. Terrible? You're in high school now, perfectly able to work. Living at home is just pampering yourself, pampering. You're in high school, time to move out. Why do I have to listen to you? I argued back, tears in my eyes. I am Alexander's wife. I'm his family. I've got a baby, but I've got an old woman to care for and a high schooler at the same time. How could you deal with harsh situation? Get out quickly. Before I knew it, Stella grabbed my collar and threw me out. Then Alexander roughly dragged my mother out. Here. Handing her to me. I couldn't believe these were the actions of parents. Stella then kicked my mother's wheelchair and threw my school bag at me. See ya! And closed the door. Wait! Please wait! I yelled, banging on the door, but they didn't come out. I was really being thrown out. That's when I realized. What's the matter, young lady? The voice came from Harris, the old man living across the street. Mr. Harris! He asked what happened. I've been thrown out with my disabled mother. But I couldn't said. It felt embarrassing, somehow shameful. Come on in for some coffee. He then gestured for me to come over with a smile. Though I was hesitant to enter a neighbor's home so quickly, it started raining, and I couldn't leave my mother out, so I gratefully accepted. Harris gave us towels and warm coffee. Noticing my tension, he made small talk, asking about my favorite things to help me relax. Eventually, I was kicked out by Alexander and his wife. I opened up. What will you do now? Do you have somewhere to go? I don't know. How about I offer you a place to live? No, we can't. We don't have the money. Oh my. I wouldn't take money from a young lady like you. It's for free. That can't be right. It's okay. Usually, old folks have extra money, and young people should take advantage when they can. I'll even cover your tuition. We can hire someone to care for your mother. What would you do for us? Don't you remember? Remember what? I used to be the janitor at your elementary school. I'm sorry, I don't remember. No wonder. You were only in 2nd grade, and I didn't have gray hair then. You found me behind the school suffering from chest pain and called for help. Now that he mentioned it, I vaguely remembered. After that, I quit and moved here and realized you were my neighbor. But just for that, you can't possibly owe me this much. No, you see, if you hadn't found me quickly, I could have ended up like your mother. I'm really grateful. I couldn't believe it, but Mr. Harris's eyes weren't deceitful like Alexander's. He genuinely seemed to care about us. You might be wary of a stranger offering you a home. So how about living with my granddaughter? She's in college and studying to be a caregiver. She could help. That sounded reassuring. I didn't want to live with anyone like Alexander again. It was a tough decision, but honestly, I had no other choice. I decided to trust Harris and accept his offer. The house he provided was a mansion, the likes of which I'd never seen, and it was wheelchair accessible. His granddaughter, Scarlett, said, I was planning to live alone for college but thought it might be lonely. She happily agreed to live with us and even shared the caregiving and household chores. I couldn't help but think, have I come to heaven? It was such a blissful life. Not only did Harris make it possible for me to attend high school, but he also offered to pay for my college, allowing me to pursue an education I thought was impossible. Scarlett was truly like a sister to me, supporting me through my studies. She helped me study for college because I hardly could have attended the high school class. Thanks to her, I was accepted into a university with much higher standards. Later, I learned Harris was from a family that owned a large corporation, involved in everything from food to caregiving services. He had been a janitor as a post-retirement hobby. One day, how can I repay you? I asked him. Then, why don't you work at one of our caregiving companies? He suggested. It didn't feel like repaying him, but he said, seeing you work hard would be the best repayment for me. So, I accepted the job at his company.
Thanks to my job, I was able to earn enough to afford outside care for my mother and live in a wheelchair-friendly house. Furthermore, Harris said, I want you to meet my grandson, Lucas. He introduced me to Lucas, who was set to eventually take over the caregiving business I worked at. Initially, I hadn't planned on it, but I was drawn to him, a year older than me, and his inclusive nature. We started dating and eventually married. Harris confessed, I had planned for you two to get together from the start. He said that when we announced our marriage, now we're truly family. He said with a twinkle in his eye, though I was not fortunate with my real family, aside from my mother. I remember being happy to have found a family in that way. My understanding husband agreed to live with my mother. My in-laws were very kind, and we were blessed with 2 children, leading a peaceful life until one day. Riley, isn't this your brother? What? Lucas handed me a resume, and there he was, aged but unmistakably Alexander. It is Alexander. He's applied for a caregiving position at one of our homes. He's got an interview next week, among other candidates. Caregiving. He would never do that. I wonder how he ended up applying here. I don't know. Hey, what if I conduct the interview? He grinned at my suggestion. That's a great idea. He said that on the day of the interview, Alexander appeared in a suit, but his shirt was wrinkled and untucked. He didn't look like someone ready to work. Please, take a seat. He complied, and our eyes met for a moment. Riley! Long time no see. I smiled, speaking to my startled brother. Why are you here? I'm the interviewer. Why are you here? I thought you despised caregiving. I love caring for the elderly, you know. Lies. After what you did to my mother and me. I was young. Please, Riley! He whispered, but then suddenly shouted to beg. What's all about? I've got no other choice. Please hire me. What do you mean? He exploded with emotion. I've been unemployed since my part-time factory job in my 30s. Stella says she can't support someone who only eats and does nothing. She started despising me when our child began daycare. I think she's seeing someone else. But she's all I have. If I don't get a job, she'll leave me for good. Alexander, a grown man, broke down and cried right there, seemingly seeking pity. I won't let him forget what he did to us. That's all? Surprised by my response, he said, How can you be so cold after hearing my misfortune? I was just a student when you and your family threw me out. I managed with minimal welfare while taking care of you all. That's different. Maybe you were fired because you're the kind of person who easily abandons family. Perhaps you lacked something essential for the job. Silenced by my words, he just trembled. Did you ever help with the kids or housework? Or were you just lazing around? He seemed shocked, probably because I hit the nail on the head. No wonder you're not treated like a human. You're like a walrus, just eating and lying around. Walruses are cute, but a husband like that is just annoying. Stella probably didn't find another man, she just grew to dislike you. And I can see why from this conversation. He had nothing to say, just shaking. Sorry, but a company can't hire someone who'd kick out your own mother and sister. We're not that desperate. What? You're not getting it? You're not hired. No one with 15 job changes like yours could be natural. His resume showed short stints at each job, likely due to being fired. He's always been self-centered, unfit for teamwork or considerate work. Indeed, even during this interview, his selfishness was evident. I mean, I only have caregiving jobs left. Thought so. Don't worry, I'll spread the word in our affiliates not to hire you. With a smile, I said, Please! Do not such a thing! And Alexander apologized again. That's non-negotiable for the elderly's safety. And, actually, I'm not really an interviewer. The real interviews ended long ago, and we've already chosen someone.
You were never going to be hired. I just gave you a fake schedule. So, no matter what, you won't be hired. Sorry about that. I grabbed his collar and threw him out like he once did to me. Goodbye. And with a smile, I waved goodbye. He tried to re-enter the room, but Luca's subordinate, who was standing by outside, threatened, "If you make any more noise, I'll call the police." And they escorted him out of the building. That was the last battle with Alexander. Afterward, he sent a letter to my company. He couldn't find work and was divorced by Stella. The letter begged for help and a job. Typical of his self-centeredness. I ignored it. He doesn't deserve help after trampling on my mother and me. I hope he learns from being on the receiving end of hardship. Meanwhile, I continue to live a peaceful life. All thanks to Harris, who took in my mother and me. He is aging, his legs growing weaker, but I still visit him regularly. My middle school children also adore him, often visiting him on their own without my knowledge. This spring, we took my mother and Harris for a picnic at a nearby lake. We're planning a summer trip. Next year, and the year after, I want to create many more wonderful memories, making up for my difficult childhood. Despite those hardships, I'm glad to have been born. I'm grateful for meeting those people. I am happy now.